Okay, we are ready to start. So, sorry, this is does that seem really loud to you? We'll just hold it out here. Welcome to the May Historic Preservation Commission meeting. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sarah Jordan, and I am filling in for Commissioner Fudge, so I'll be serving as chair today. We have an extremely full agenda. I know we say that every month, but we have a really, really full agenda. So please be prepared to be concise and ready to go when called upon. As a reminder, please limit your individual conversations during this, going back to the length of this agenda. Before the commission votes on each item, I'm going to ask if anyone from the public would like to speak. Speakers are given 3 minutes to relay information to commission members. The agenda and documents for today's meeting are located on the PrimeGov website. If you're following along, select Agenda on the right side of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting to see the items being discussed. Written comments received more than 24 hours before today's meeting are posted online and were shared with commission members. At this point, no new materials may be shared with the commission. If you brought materials with you, please keep them at your seat as we cannot accept and review them. Keith, would you please call roll?
Jordan.
Present.
Gaines. Present. Milner.
Here.
Poor.
Present.
Whitley.
Present.
Okay, thank you. For the sake of time, we ask anyone who's unfamiliar with the agenda and the process of these meetings to please refer to the procedures section in the agenda, which is again available on the PrimeGov site. There are 2 items we'd like to note specifically regarding the meetings process. These items involve certificates of appropriateness and appeals. Do you want me to go all the way through this, Katie? Okay. Sorry, I'm a little new at this chairman job. Regarding the certificates of appropriateness, after an application is approved and the 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the CA to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the certificate of appropriateness is issued. Please contact HP staff for final design review inspection or to withdraw items that will not be completed. Regarding appeal to Board of Adjustments, any person aggrieved by a decision granting or denying a CA may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustments. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the Board of Adjustments. Katie, do we have any news from the Office of Historic Preservation?
I have nothing to report.
Do we need to move anything today?
So we are going to move one item up as a new request for continuances. Rita, do we need to officially move that on the agenda, or we just vote on that when we get to? Okay. Okay. We can do that when we get to that point on the agenda.
Okay, great. Have the commission members had a chance to review the minutes from the April meeting? Does anybody have questions, or would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the April meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Poore, seconded by Commissioner Milner. If you could all vote in PrimeGov, please. Maybe. Okay, moving on. Katie, do we have anything from code enforcement?
Just to clarify, it recorded Commissioner Jordan as abstaining. Did you intend to?
Yes, I was not
okay.
here for the
All right,
April
great.
meeting.
Just wanted to make sure. Nothing particular to report from code enforcement. As always, if you have questions about any of the items in that code enforcement report that are attached in the meeting packet, feel free to reach out to staff or to the Action Center.
Okay, let's see. We've already had a continuance announcement, yes?
Yes, so we have one previously announced request for continuance, HPCA 22-00161 at 2412 North Robinson. They would like to be continued to June 7th. So we will need a motion and a vote on that one. And then we have a new request to continue HPCA 23-00040 at 419 Northwest 20th. This is item 6 under individual consideration. They would like to be continued to July 5th. So we need a motion and a vote on each of those.
Okay, anybody, Commissioner Gaines? Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. If you would all vote in Prime Gov. Okay, moving on to that second request for continuance. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll motion continuance.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay. If everybody would vote on this. Okay, moving on to public hearings. Any dilapidated structures?
Nothing under dilapidated structures and also nothing under National Register nominations. 3 items under the consent docket.
Okay, if everybody has had a chance to review the consent docket, do we have a motion to accept this, or would anyone like to see anything pulled?
I make a motion to accept the consent docket.
I'll second that motion.
So just that we are approving the
To
consent
approve,
docket.
yes.
Yeah, sorry, to approve. Yep.
Okay, if you would vote in Prime Gov, please. Pardon me, again, new at this job. Would anyone from the public like to speak to an item on the consent docket? Nope, okay. Then if you all would vote in Prime Gov, please. Okay, the consent docket has been approved, so if your project was on the consent docket, congratulations, you're free to go, or you're welcome to stick around and join us for the rest of this meeting. All right, we are moving on to cases for individual consideration. So HPCA 22-00049, 120 Northwest 27th Street. Is the applicant present? Okay, would you come on up and state your name and address into the mic and tell us a little bit about your project?
So as you're walking up, this is Jefferson Park, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Mitesh Patel, Parwati Investment, for a certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct triplex elective, 3, install paving elective, 4, install mechanical equipment elective, 7, install fence elective, and 8, request recommendation to Board of Adjustment for variances for height, number of stories, lot width, and lot size. This has been on the agenda previously. It's never been discussed in a commission meeting because it's had to be continued because the applicant was unavailable to be present. And then last month it was on and the applicant was present and we had a noticing error, so we weren't able to discuss it. But it is a proposal for a triplex in Jefferson Park. The area is zoned to allow for multifamily. They would have to get a variance because the regulations require them to have a greater lot width and size and a lower height than what is proposed. But the proposed structure is 2 stories. It is wider and deeper, larger than surrounding structures, although it is in line with, multifamily structures that we see throughout the surrounding area, the surrounding district. Staff has recommended approval. There are a number of conditions noted, some kind of giving the commission opportunity to discuss any changes that you might want to see to the design if necessary. And then we've recommended a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment.
Welcome. Sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit there on the on getting this started.
I think she did the introduction for me, though, so right.
Yes, there we go. So, heard a little bit about your project. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? I know that, my concern with this was the size, which Katie spoke to. Seems like staff has some thoughts on that and some ideas for getting this moved along. Any other commissioners have things they'd like to know about with any of these items? No one? Okay. Anybody have a motion then?
I will just,
Oh,
I was just going to note that we do have conditions associated with the recommendations of approval on several items. Just wanted to make sure that the applicant has seen those conditions and is amenable to those requirements.
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Yeah, I generally agree with staff recommendations here, so.
anyone from the public want to speak to this project? Okay, well,
Can I motion approval?
you can motion whatever you would like.
Motion approval of HPCA-22-0049. I think we have to do this in two, though, don't we? So items 1, 3, 4, and 7, because we have to do the Board of Adjustment
Yes, you can do
separate,
items 1 through 7 with the findings and conditions as noted in the staff report, and then do a separate motion for the recommendation.
Okay. So I am moving approval, again, of HPCA-22-0049, items 1, 3, 4, and 7, with specific findings and conditions as noted in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, if you would all vote in PrimeGov, please. Okay, well, congratulations.
Awesome.
Katie,
I have
do you,
another one to,
oh, you have the Board of Adjustment. I'm gonna
Yep.
get it here in a second. I'm
That's all
sorry, I'm
right.
really not used to this.
that's all right. I'm going to move approval. Well, it's not approval. I'm going to move, oh, I get it wrong when we do.
Recommendation.
Recommend approval to the Board of Adjustments. Do I need to repeat that? Okay. As noted in staff report for HPCA-22-00049, item 8.
Second.
Okay, if you would all vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that has also passed. So, Katie, any direction for following up on those agreed upon conditions?
So just, we'll get with staff on anything associated with those that needs to be submitted or revised going forward so that we can get your CA out with all the accurate documentation.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to case 2.
This is HPCA 22-170 at 1607 Classen Drive, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by John Beeden, Behold Inc., for Luke or Kristen Rebinich for certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish garage elective, and 2, construct 2-story garage elective. The commission has seen this once previously and continued the item. It is to demolish an existing garage that is historic, but that the applicant has documented as having some previous alterations to it, and then to construct a 2-story garage. The design has been revised since the previous submittal, and the applicant has also provided some additional information regarding its proximity to kind of the edge of the historic district, visibility from different vantage points, et cetera. Staff has recommended approval of the demolition of the garage, and has gotten a little wimpy on you and given you a recommendation option for approval or denial on the new construction. They are, I think they do have one continuance remaining. So there you go.
Okay, well, the applicant is clearly present, so if you would like to state your name and address for the record, that would be great.
Sure. I'm John Beeden. I live at 1138 Northwest 40th.
Okay, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Kristen Rebinich at 1607 Classen Drive, and I have with me is my small army, which is my mom and my baby, who I just had 2 months ago.
Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, do you want to kind of give us an update on where this stands and any changes that have been made since we've reviewed it last?
There was some confusion when we were here last time about what we were discussing. So if we're first talking about the demolition, right? I don't know that there are any more changes. I think that this picture is a good picture of what the case I'm making. That the paneling on the sides of both the garage doors and then that strip down the middle of the garage doors was added at a later date. You can see, or this is a good picture too, the brick is probably most likely what was the footprint of the original garage. And then those windows are original, the door is not. I don't know about the garage doors. But I believe that those panels were put on the front of those legs of the garage doors because the brick itself is about to fall apart. And I believe that taking that, even to restore that, to take that off, it would well finish the deterioration of the brick, certainly the mortar joints. And I'm also stating that that is, if we're talking about what is historic, I don't know that that garage in this picture is a good picture of it, is historic. So the additions to it.
I'll also add what you can't see in the picture and what I go through every day as the homeowner is there is a large crack on the cement slab right where our vehicles have the rear passengers. And so every day I am feeling for that crack, trying to get my baby in and out of the car seats. So when you think about the cement slab having foundational issues and it not being safe, that's something you just can't see in the picture.
Okay, and so moving kind of past the demolition onto the proposed plans, do you want to just refresh us on that? I think you all were last here in March, is that right? Okay,
Yes.
so yeah, maybe just a little quick refresh.
Yes, so we were asking that is there a drawing of it? There aren't any? They're not on there? Oh, okay. To build a two-story garage. I think the drawing that we had, or what we had proposed, had one large garage door, right? And then historic preservation, I believe both you mentioned, and the Heritage Hills Preservation said that it would have had two doors. So that, I think I made that change. I'm addressing now what you're saying, or are there any changes to what we had talked about before, right? The footprint we changed. We made it a little bit wider to incorporate the stairs for the living, for the space upstairs. So the change made to overall height as well. We turned it into a flat roof that would have the overall height then, I believe, was now 19 foot. I think you have that in the drawing. I do. The overall height then would be 19 foot, a little bit more than 19 feet 4 inches, a little under 19 foot 4 inches. So.
And what is, I'm reading it here in the staff report, but I admit I'm a little bit confused. What is the footage of the actual footprint? Is it, I mean, it's saying here it's 756, but that feels like that might be inaccurate.
I think it's on the page that has the overall lot coverage as well. Yeah. porous to non-porous, or the coverage, I think is what we refer to it as, doesn't change on this with increasing the footprint. And it's just the width of the stairwell, 3 feet, 3.5 feet. The solid surface is already, I mean, it's already paved. I mean, it's part of the pool deck.
Sarah, just quick math on the dimensions on the floor plan. It's like around 756 square
Okay.
feet for the footprint.
So it is already a pretty large footprint. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions, comments about this project?
My question is about the appropriateness of a two-story garage. And according to the Heritage Hills Preservation Commission, there aren't two-story garages nearby.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Poore. I'm not really bothered by the demolition of the garage. 'Cause for me, it's kind of like, what is it, the ship of Theseus? Like if everything is replaced one board, one brick at a time, is it really the original building anymore? And it seems like a lot of the majority of the historic fabric no longer exists. So I'm not really bothered by the demolition so much as, I think we should maybe question if 2 stories is appropriate.
It is a two-story house, but I know in the past we have not approved two-story garages because there was no adjacent two-story nearby. And isn't that one of the guidelines,
Right.
Katie?
So there is a two-story across the street, and there is a two-story one house down.
Yeah, so the guidelines say that when we don't know what the historic garage was, a 2-story garage is appropriate if 2-story garages are either abutting or are predominant in the area. So abutting means sharing a property line. Well, so first and foremost, we do know what the historic garage was because it's still there. We know that it's a 1-story garage. And then if we are going to refer to the other guidelines about the surrounding area, then abutting means it's sharing a property line. We don't appear to have a 2-story garage that is abutting. And while there may be some 2-story garages in the area, they don't appear to be the predominant pattern in the surrounding block.
This is where, in the conversation in the March meeting, I mentioned that the distance of the property adjacent behind it, and because it is a side lot, puts it much closer to the property line and makes it, certainly in massing and in view, you wouldn't know that that is a, you can see it from, go back. I believe there's a picture in there that is a close-up of that there. And then there are a few pictures in the photographs that show the proximity of the house, the 2-story house in the back. I think it's a house. It's possibly a duplex. It is going on under some, see it right there, the white structure behind there.
So the house wouldn't be blocking anyone's view because it's a house to a house.
I think the challenge with me, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with the guidelines, but we've denied other cases for the exact reason, and so I don't feel good about allowing it to happen here and looking past that guideline when we didn't in the past. So that's my challenge and that I struggle with. And again, I'm not saying I agree with the guidelines. Maybe that's something we need to explore, but
I do want to reiterate that the original drawings were, for a roof like this, and as John mentioned, they did change to accommodate, to have a flat roof to lower the height. as you can see, we have a 3-story house. So when you think of from the street looking out, you're looking at a 3-story, and then the level, you wouldn't even be able to tell that it's really a 2-story garage from his new plans.
I actually think that the flat roof makes it stand out and look uncharacter, like it doesn't fit within the character of the, I think it actually makes it stand out more, personally, but.
The flat roof on the height too, I thought in some of these pictures I had included, are the pictures at the end, Angela, are these in what they have? They have these too? Yeah, okay. So. Okay, okay. So there is a perspective drawing from, this was also part of what was not historic about it, but the demolition doesn't matter now. The flat roof, what is visible from the street also is limited. But this house does have other places where it is viewed, right? And that is from, you can see it from Harn Park where the corner makes that. So behind, in this picture, the stucco house there to the left, it's to the east in here. If you are at Harn Park and looking across, you see their garage, which I'm sure there's a photograph in there of it, which is a flat roof. It also appears to be taller. It is a 1-story, but it appears to be, yeah, this the picture here, yeah. It does, while their garage is a 1-story, it does appear to be taller than a traditional 1-story. And then you can see the smaller one next to it with the garage doors, right, the barn doors there. And then you can see where it ends up with, there's another picture that shows the roof line of yeah. So that white gable you see in the middle there is the roof. The flat roof, as you can see from here, from this vantage point, of course, is certainly below the plane of the majority of the construction, except for, or the structures, except for their, and now that I look at it, it doesn't appear to be a garage, it appears to be a back house or something, so. And certainly below the line of the property in the distance on the other side of those trees, which is on the other side of Classen, for reference anyway, so, thank you.
For staff, I just had a question about the footprint. You know, we're focusing a lot on the height and whether a 2-story garage is appropriate, but now seeing actually that, and I understand it's already a large footprint for a historic garage, but have we discussed the additional, you know, the talk of increasing this already large footprint on a built-up lot? It's kind of escaped me until just now because we've been focusing on the 2-story garage element.
Right, the footprint increases from 696 to 756 square feet. The guidelines allow for a garage to, only allow for a garage to increase beyond the existing size up to 450 square feet or 500 or 5% of the lot. So we're beyond that with the increase. The existing garage is already larger than what we would allow for a new garage. So the guidelines would say that they could go back as big as it exists now, but not any larger. The one other thing that I wanted to point out that is not really called out in the staff report, because we technically don't really review the interior of a structure, but it is shown in the plans as having what would appear to be a true second dwelling unit. And the HP-based zoning doesn't allow that. So that is one other, you know, whether this gets approved or not, that would be something that would be potentially an issue going forward for permitting.
Okay, and what is the justification for increasing that footprint?
Well, it's the stairwell. The garage is already tight for if it were to be a second story. So we did do an option that had the stairwell outside, right, over the stairs to upstairs. You can see just beyond the brick before the curb of the pool deck, yes. And then we thought about it for what the purpose of that being, and going up and down there, if the stairs could be covered, would be better, so.
Have you all, because we do have some neighborhood comments on this one, and I do see in this submission that you've adjusted the garage doors. Have you all worked with HPI, with Heritage Hills, on kind of the conflict between this single-story garage and this two-story garage?
Well, I have spoken, or we have correspondence via email that their recommendation, of course, is that the garage not come down, and that because it wasn't historic. And then, as I mentioned in the last meeting, the discussion was, and I don't remember if that was the neighborhood association or the commission, talked about them being, if it were to be replaced, for it to have two garage doors instead of one large one, and that is certainly something that would be accommodated.
Can we see if there's any comments
I can
from the
also
public?
say,
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone from the public want to speak to this while we're kind of discussing these neighborhood comments?
okay. Also something, we could be, it is acceptable to us to keep the footprint the same size and put the stairwell on the outside, right? To have an exposed stairwell is what I'm saying, so, which is fairly common on the two-story garages in the area. So.
I think we've got somebody from the public who would like to speak. Ma'am, would you state your name and address for the record?
Yes, it's my first time here, so I guess I should do that. I'm Marva Ellard, and I live at 1521 North Chartel Avenue, and I am the current president of HPI.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you very much. We were here in March and talked about this, and I think after listening to Commissioner Poore and Commissioner Whitley, I think we would be, could be supportive of a one-story garage, a new one-story garage, if it falls into the standards or the allowances of the ordinance. I don't believe we can support a two-story garage in this location because it doesn't conform to the ordinance. I met the 2-month-old, and I understand some of your needs, and we do understand that. I haven't personally looked at the garage to know its current condition, but their one-story garage is like 50 square feet less than my two-story garage. So my two-story garage is a little under 800 square feet, so that, to me, they already kind of have the benefit of a two-story garage, but it's a one-story. So I don't quite understand some of the discussion about what could be allowed, but I think that would be our stance on this, is that we should abide by the ordinance and have a one-story garage in this location.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other members of the public who would like to speak to this?
I have a question on that. Katie, would a 1.5-story be allowable by the guidelines?
So the guidelines do allow for a 1.5-story garage where 2-story garages are not allowed, so long as they approximate the look of a 1-story.
Well, as for my 2 cents, I definitely agree with Commissioner Whitley that I could get behind a demolition, because so much of this original, I appreciate the original form is still existing, but it does appear to have been significantly altered, and so I don't know to what benefit it is to, maintain this highly altered garage. But to echo Commissioner Poore, unfortunately, I just don't see an actual justification for putting in a 2-story garage here.
We definitely appreciate your guys' consideration, as well as HPI. If you would like, we would like to consider the 1.5-story. I think that's a great suggestion.
Okay.
So there is a actual definition in the municipal code of 1.5 story, and it is that the wall where it spans from the floor to where it meets the roof is no more than 3 feet. So it's essentially giving you a slightly larger built-out attic space, which on a garage of this size is going to be a significant amount of room, I would think. So that may be a good option for you to pursue.
If you all were to pursue, that's a fairly radical change to what you've been pursuing. Is it realistic to hear this again at the June meeting, or would you prefer to be looking at the July? We do still have one continuance, correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And is there any way that staff, if they came back to staff with a 1 story that complied completely, could you guys approve that? Or 1.5 story that complied?
I think because we haven't seen a design that was anything like that, I would really want it to come back to the commission and
Just
for you
wanted
all
to
to
double
see it.
check. Okay.
Okay, any thoughts or preference on a meeting date? To be on the June docket, you'd have to have everything submitted by a week from yesterday, so next Tuesday. No pressure.
I'm doing calculations in my head. Is there an option to say next month and then, yes, for it to be next month, and then, of course, if I can't make it?
Great question for Katie.
So we do have to continue to a specific date, and because you're out of continuances, whatever date it is that we can continue, to, that's the end.
That's the last
That's
one.
the yes or no, yeah.
Okay. Right. So we need to go to, that would be the July,
Okay.
the July meeting. Okay.
Katie, is that July
It is-
6th, or
it
has
is,
it been moved?
It's a different day this year.
That is a good question, because we did,
Thank
I think it is still July 5th.
Or sorry, July 5th?
It's July 5th.
July
And
5th?
it is, we will let you know, but we got bumped from our usual time because city council has to occur on that same day because the previous day is a holiday. So we will be meeting later in the afternoon, but it will be the same day.
Oh, okay.
It'll be Wednesday, July 5th. We'll just have a slightly later start time.
So if there's
I
no
think
other
it's July.
comments,
I think we had it scheduled for the afternoon of July 6th, Thursday.
Let me double.
That's the one, that's what I put on my calendar when we last discussed it.
Second question for you all. This gets asked a lot when we're talking about the demolition of a structure. Should this commission approve the demolition, would you prefer that to happen today, or as part of your whole packet, should you come back to, there's a benefit of being on the same timeline, but,
I 100% think you shouldn't demo anything unless knowing what's going up, so,
okay.
yeah.
I'll make a motion for a continuance on 22-170, item 1 and 2, to the July meeting, whatever that date
Okay.
is.
Yeah,
and I'll second.
Okay, thank you. If you would all vote in prime gov. Okay, the motion has carried, so we will see you in July. Okay, moving on to case number 3.
this is HPCA 23-00014 at 110 Northwest 16th Street, Heritage Hills East, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Stephen Prentice for a certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace windows with no remaining continuances required, and 2, paint building with remaining continuances required. And that is just to indicate, to clarify, the windows have been heard twice previously. There are no remaining continuances. The application item to paint the building has not been heard previously, and they do have remaining continuances if that were to need to be continued to a future meeting. The commission, as I said, the commission has seen the windows previously. One portion of the building has been replaced. On one portion, the historic windows remain. The applicant has provided window documentation for an Anderson window product to go back with a double hung 1/1 wood window. Staff is still looking for some documentation of the remaining historic windows to confirm that the Anderson windows are going to match those. as well as more dimensions and details on the Anderson window products themselves.
Okay, would you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Stephen Prentice, 314 Frisco Road Northwest, Piedmont, Oklahoma, 73078.
Okay, welcome back.
Thank you.
So we are essentially looking at the same building and basically the same submission we saw in March. No, you all were here in April. I was not here in April, so you all have seen this twice. Can you tell us about the changes you're proposing this time and walk us through your proposed materials?
Yes, basically, we're looking at replacing the vinyl windows that we put in inappropriately on 110. 112 is still the original windows. And I brought Angela Ryan with me with Anderson Windows to basically tell the story that whatever we've got on the one side, we can match on the other side, because they make custom windows. I'm at the point of realization that there's not an option here. We need to have wood windows go back. So that's the purpose of her being here, to be able to say, here's what we can do.
Okay.
So our window.
Use the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm plenty loud. Our window is still designed like the wood 1900 windows with the tenon and mortise, the slope sash, the size of the frame. It's 40% wood, 60% thermopolymers, meaning it's maintenance free. And we're the only company that guarantees energy efficiency in our windows. So not only do you have the old look, but it's brought up to today's green standards, if you will. I'm going to let you guys ask me questions.
Okay. Katie, does staff have specific, I know we're missing some information in this submission, but I don't think that these windows were the ones discussed within the scope of this
So we
submission?
did have information that it was going to be an Anderson window. We didn't have specific information on the construction and the composition of the window. So I think that is an item of discussion for the commission, that the window is 40% wood. Our guidelines say windows need to be wood or aluminum clad wood. We are seeing more of these types of products come through, and it's not something the guidelines really address. But you know, when we say wood, what I take that to mean is cut from a tree, a piece of wood. The other thing that we seem to be lacking was comparison drawings between the remaining historic windows and the sash, the casing around the window, the brick mold, and the replacement window, so that we could verify that they were going to match. We have a drawing of an Anderson window with a muntin that's labeled as 2 inches, and I would say that's definitely more than a 2-inch wide, not muntin, sorry, mullion between the windows. So just wanting to be able to confirm and to verify that the new windows going in are going to replicate that historic window condition.
Absolutely. So that mullion in there is just a piece of wood. That could be anywhere from 1 inch to 4 to 3 feet. So we are going to custom build the window to fit the opening exactly like the old wood window did. And did you say you are allowing aluminum clad windows?
So the guidelines allow wood or aluminum clad wood windows.
Okay. So those look like metal on the exterior, the aluminum clad. So what is it that we're really after here? Like the look from afar to look like the old wood window, to keep the historic look in?
I just know that the guidelines say wood or aluminum clad wood. I think it was to get as authentic as possible a replication or an approximation of a historic wood window. And I don't know if this type of that piece of the guidelines was drafted in about 2012. I don't know if this product was in anybody's mind at the time that was written, but it says wood and aluminum clad wood. And then it talks specifically about vinyl not being allowed and that sort of thing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So
That's plastic.
I have a question. You said that the window is 40% wood?
Right, 60% thermopolymers fused together, which is what makes it strong and maintenance-free. But it still has the look of the 1900s wood window, which I thought that's what the Historic Society was after.
because quite frankly, the aluminum clad wood, one, the wood rots interior when you don't see it because aluminum and wood don't react the same in weather changes, so that you get a little bit of moisture in there and the wood is not allowed to dry out and they're rotting from within. And then you also have that metal look on the exterior which oxidizes. So it's not, to me, a good-looking window, where if you put something like this in that has the same tendon and mortise and the slope seal of the 1900 wood window, and it's maintenance-free and energy efficiency, it seems like it's the whole package.
Yeah, and I think that was sort of the intent. I think when we allowed for aluminum-clad wooden windows, it was a step that we took because if you have 40% wood, 60% polymer, or a wood inside the metal that we can't see, I mean,
Right.
those are changes that are going to happen. So I think that was something we've already kind of crossed.
Well, I see wanting to evolve and yet keep that historic look, because that's a cool look.
The exterior is paintable.
Katie, is this a material that, just because this is, a first for all of us, I mean, is this something that could be approved since it's not addressed in any capacity?
Well, I would say anything can be approved with a unique circumstance or with the commission determining that even if it's not addressed by the guidelines, it's appropriate. I don't know that this is a product that I would say clearly checks the box, meets the guideline as a wood window.
So there are still historic windows that have not been replaced. You haven't replaced all the windows on the entire building, is that correct? There are still some that have not been replaced?
That's correct. That side of the duplex still has the historic windows.
So
It's a duplex. 110 Northwest 16th has been replaced. 112 has not been touched. Okay, so we made a petition to do them all, and in the midst of doing 110 is when I learned cannot replace them with vinyl. And so we would intend to replace all of them, but we're focusing on 110 right now to get it right. If we can determine this window works, or if we got to figure out what's the other window that works. Because the last time we met, I was given instruction and got some kind support from this gentleman, but no answer as to who can we use. He said, great, glad they directed you to me, but I don't have a list of anybody for you to go pick out. So I picked this girl out, and she says she can make it look like wood, and it is wood, 40% or whatever, and I don't know what the rest of the stuff is. I really don't understand it all, but if we're looking for looks, these guys have been around a long time. They make good windows. It's good quality. I'm not trying to cheap out on anything here.
Yeah. So I think the ones that have not been replaced definitely still
I know you're not cheap.
should still stay in place and not be replaced with this. I mean,
I do agree with that. I am curious how that impacts the whole structure, if, how close of a match anything would be if we're talking about repairing. It's interesting because it's literally right down the middle. It's like we're going to be looking at things just right next to each other, whereas we most commonly see people replacing a single window or maybe the back windows due to an addition or something. This is certainly an instance where whatever goes in on 110 would need to be, it's a hyper-specific window that needs to go in so that it's not just so obvious that it's been replaced.
Well, as far as hyper-specific, it is just the distance of what you cut that piece of wood between the two windows. These two windows are not mullioned together as a single unit. So you don't bring out a double window that's already been molded together where it's one unit for two windows. It's two separate windows with a piece of wood in between. Okay? So you can cut that piece of wood whatever dimension you want. And it's real close to 4 1/4 inches. The picture that we put in there as far as the drawing, that was just to show whatever it is, now we can match it because these guys are in the business to match it.
I don't know that I personally could get behind anything that wasn't a true real wood window, especially since so many do still exist on the other half of this duplex. That
We could
said,
replace those two to solve that.
pardon me?
We could replace those two to solve that.
Well, we really don't like that.
Yeah, I would not be in support of that.
We've got some neighborhood comments. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to the windows specifically? You again.
But she comes with a good attitude, so please hear her.
When we did the Seaver, we
Would
did it
you-
as a tax.
would you please state
Marva
your name?
Ellard, 1521 North Chartel Avenue.
Thank you.
When we did the Seaver, we did it as a tax credit project. And so we had very few original windows left. But the Park Service asked us to put them together because we had openings of certain sizes. And so we realized some of these windows don't exist anymore, but could it be a possibility to measure some of them and see if the front of the building or the visible side of the building could be original windows, and then the Anderson windows could be used in less visible locations? I don't think we can support removing all the original windows, so if there was some way to, I agree it would look odd to have original windows on one side of the front and new windows on the other side. It could be pretty obvious that way, but it's just a thought, because just from the pictures, it looks like a lot of the windows are very close to the same size.
Mhm.
Could I
Sure.
comment that? That's a great picture right there to show you. The mullion that was, or described as a mullion that is actually a piece of wood, on the one here on the right, is same, still preserved over there on the left. Okay? So those windows will just come out and be replaced, just like you have on the other side. It just would look like this and get painted the same.
So is that something, though, that you would consider, like on the front, to make them all one, move the windows around, so?
Yeah, we can make right side look just like the left side. So to achieve what she just asked,
But then retain the original windows, but move them so that they're consistent?
well,
Not replace everything with new
have to
windows?
say that again because I'm not quite following.
So I think what Marva was saying was to have the front of the building, like take those new windows out, replace them with old windows from some other side that's not as visible. So in the front, it would be all the old original, and the back would be all new. Move them around, not allow for new windows,
Okay.
but
You can't get those windows out and move them from the back and take it to the front. They'll come to pieces. Because what you see right there is super cosmetic. I mean, there's a whole lot of makeup on there. So you talk about a face that's in trouble, and you got to put a lot of makeup on it. That's what you got here.
They may come in pieces, but you can put them back together. I mean,
Yeah.
been doing this on my own house and repairing and replacing the storm windows. And I mean, it is a lot of work and it is costly, but that's the thing about living in a historic district is.
Right, that's the benefit of the historic district, and I do appreciate that.
So just to point out on the, I mean, what staff's talking about when we're talking about the mullion is not just the mullion in and of itself, but if you look at the relationship between that mullion to the brick mold around the window, it's very noticeably different from the replaced windows to the other windows. That brick mold detail is something that also needs to be replicated. It's not clear in what we have now if we're talking about just a sash or if we're talking about all the way back to the rough opening. So all of those details from the brick all the way into the glass should be something that can be replicated where you can't tell the historic window from the new window because it's wood. We can take that profile of the wood and we can copy that and copy the dimensions and replicate that in the new opening. So that's what staff is looking for in the window documentation.
It took me a minute to understand what you were saying on that. And that's why I wanted to say something. We can make it look like the one on the right. We can maul our windows together. We can put a piece of wood strip on there that can be painted, so you have a little bit more grain in it, if you will. We have all kinds of different trim. We can use brick mold. You know, we have different trims that we can use as well, and we can replicate that 99%. You'll have that.
I mean, are
Leaving
you doing
1%
a
for
custom
air.
extrusion on these windows to match exactly what the existing wood ones are? Said on these windows, which actually don't appear to me to look like wood at all, so I don't know how you're actually replicating that look, but are you using a custom extrusion to match the existing wood
Okay,
windows?
so when we say we can replicate it, we can replicate the tendon and mortise corners, the slope seal. I'm not saying that we have texture, if that's what you're asking. That's a Fibrex material, but it is paintable. Now, if you paint it, that's going to add a little texture to it if you want that, but it comes in several different colors. It is maintenance-free if you leave it alone.
I mean,
but
as soon as you
we-
paint something, it's not maintenance-free anymore.
But if you leave it alone, if you leave it alone, it's maintenance-free. But if you paint it, then yes, you're creating some work there. But we can also put wood trim around the exterior and paint it. So if you're wanting something, you know, a little more textured, I guess is the word I keep coming up with. Is that what, am I on the same page as you are?
I guess my concern is that, you might be able to use this to get a window that has, you know, the same profile, I guess, but
Okay.
it doesn't look the same as a wood window. Like, it doesn't, it has different character, and that's where I struggle, because that's the reality of being in historic districts, unfortunately.
Why don't we do this? I feel like we're kind of coming to an impasse, and I don't think there's a way to approve this product today. I do think that the feedback, kind of the takeaway, is that we would not be in favor of removing or replacing any wood windows that are salvageable. So I think the goal has to be, especially on this front of the property, that those windows from 110 need to match those windows from 112. Because you're out of continuances, the only, on the windows, not the brick, but because you're out of continuances, we will have to deny this. You can deny with prejudice or without. Staff has recommended with prejudice so that you can't resubmit the exact same packet and the exact same info. This is a pretty serious deviation from anything that we've seen, so I think no matter what, it's going to have to come back with all of this detail, if that's the route you choose to go. You know, again, our feedback seems to be consistent that we want wood windows on the front and we want them to match those from 112. So I think we're really going to have to move towards a denial and revisit this with more detail if that's kind of the, if you all agree with that, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I agree. I think staff needs to work with the applicant. We can't have the debate up here all day long. Nobody would be able to get their
Yeah, and
CAs.
I'm not hearing anybody seemingly willing to approve that right now. So I think it would be more to your benefit to have this conversation with staff and come back.
And I'm more welcome to come in and have an individual, so you guys, we're not tying everybody up.
That will have to happen just with staff, but they will work with you on that,
Yeah, I mean,
definitely.
I'm just saying I'm here.
Okay. And then we need to discuss the unpainted, the painted brick and mortar. This has been done and needs to be reviewed as if it has not been, similar to the windows. So questions from the commission regarding this? I know we've already reviewed it. Okay, so in an ideal situation, we would love to see that you attempt to remove this paint and, you know, determine whether that would cause, we certainly don't want to damage the brick and we don't want to open a can of worms on that, but we would like to see an effort to restore it. Is that something that you are open to doing? We have, I think, one more continuance on this.
This one has two
more.
continuances left. This is the first that it's been heard.
Oh, I apologize.
I think we talked about the paint a little bit previously
Okay.
because it was obvious in the photos that it had been done, but it has not been on an agenda.
Okay. Katie, do you want to elaborate on kind of how we would ordinarily go about trying to see if we could salvage the brick.
Yeah, well, and I think, Mr. Prentice, did you have someone with you today to speak about the painting? That was our understanding, that you had somebody come in with you to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I'm the only one here to talk about it.
Okay,
Uh,
so
yeah,
what,
I've talked to them. I maybe can get them to come to another meeting. But they said they wanted to hear what's going to happen on this window here.
Oh.
And so I'm going to give them that report. You know, the brick, the paint's not going to come off. What he'll testify to is the paint's not going to come off without destroying the brick. So
Yeah,
the
Katie,
structure-
that's my problem. I mean, obviously, we don't like to have to deal with it afterwards, but I don't think so what are the two options without spending another hour discussing
Yeah.
this? If it's already painted, I think if you try to take the paint off, you do destroy it, and it doesn't bring back the natural look anyway. So is the option just to prove it the way it is, or?
yeah, so I mean, we do have examples around town of successful paint removal from brick. This is a particularly rough textured brick, so I would not be surprised to hear a paint, representative say it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to get the paint off. What we have asked people to do in the past is to kind of document their best effort. There are various products out there that are specifically made to remove paint from brick, and we've had people work with a professional, work with those recommended products, go out, try a little sample patch in a not so visible location on the building, document that, come back and show that to the commission that it was or was not going to be viable to remove the paint. I think, other testimony may be sufficient to convince the commission that it's not feasible to remove the paint. And then I think ultimately either you are approving an application with the condition that they remove the paint, because everyone comes to an agreement that that's doable, or you are approving the application to paint the brick with some findings and unique circumstances to identify why, in this case, it has to be approved.
So just to, save him the time and trouble and save everybody here the time, if he goes and he tries to, he goes through the process of trying to remove the paint, if he brings it to staff and it's clear that it can't be salvaged, is that something you all can approve without coming before the commission, or does he have to come back before the commission?
I believe that painting unpainted masonry has to go to commission.
Is there any scenario in which we move this along today without hearing it again?
Just approving it or denying it?
Yeah.
So I was just going to add that I've had somebody have paint the graffiti that they needed to remove off of a Bragg building, and they used elephant snot. That's a thing. That's what it's called. And then you put it on, and then you power wash it off. So I don't know if that's maybe something you want to look into.
Yeah.
I tried that on my fireplace and it didn't work, and it's smaller.
Graffiti.
What color was this? Was this red before?
Mhm.
So if you look in here, you can see some variances in the color. Is that due to different textures on the brick?
Yes, there were many different brick styles, and there are many different, repairs that were done. That's the reason why we painted it.
Right.
And it was painted, you weren't here at the last meeting, but, we painted it with Benjamin Moore, so we were very historic in our paint choices. But that's with a primer coat first and 2 coats on top. And this is the high-end paint. It's not coming off. I know that, and I'll go through whatever exercise you guys are going to ask me to do, but there is a certain position of futility here, that we're going to destroy the brick, so we've got to decide how much brick do we need to destroy before we can make a decision about what's the right thing to do. And that's kind of where we're at, but I'm at your mercy. So what do you want to do?
Yeah, I understand that sometimes it's better to do that. We have a problem if it happens and then we have to deal with it afterwards, sort of setting a precedent.
That's my problem. I created the problem here by taking the action to paint, by putting vinyl windows up. So I'm the one accountable for that, and that's why I'm standing here before you, asking for a way forward.
Well, I think we have definitely a consensus on the windows, and it sounds like we really just need to move towards a continuance on the painted brick and see what you come up with. Do you feel comfortable being continued to the June meeting?
Be delighted. Or what,
Okay.
what date is it?
I believe that's, let's take a look. That would be
It is
June the 7th?
Yep.
June 7th.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, I'll make a motion for a continuance on HPCA 23-00014 to the June meeting,
Item 2.
item 2.
And I'll second that.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
may-
you.
Could I ask one last thing? So for clarification, my job is to go get some elephant's knot and smear it around on the brick, see what it looks like, take you some pictures, come back. I can't just go talk to Katie. We're coming back to do this one more time about the paint. So is that the instruction?
So it doesn't have to be that product. I would say you've already been talking with a paint vendor.
Right.
They may have some recommended products. You can do some research. I think staff is aware of some different products that people have used to remove paint from brick, and we can get you that information. I think it's just demonstrating at least a sincere attempt to remove the brick. Again, you want to do it in a
Remove paint.
location that's not going to be highly visible, that, you know, is behind landscaping or something like that, so that, you know, it doesn't make it look worse when you do that. And just a small enough area to see if it works. Like has been said, we certainly don't want to see the brick damaged or the mortar damaged, so.
Let me ask you questions for convenience. If you're going to submit a new CA for the windows, if that's going to be 2 months, then on this brick, you could do a continuance on the brick issue for 2 months to July meeting instead of June, so you don't have to come to both meetings, right?
Yeah.
That sounds good. Let's do that.
Just to help you from not having to come to both, okay.
Appreciate it.
So I'll amend my motion for continuance on item number 2 to the July meeting.
Thank you.
And I will still second that.
Okay, now if you all would vote. Okay, that motion carries. Do we have a motion on item 1?
We need to, is that the denial?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll move denial with prejudice for HPCA-23-00014, item 1.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. If you'd all vote. Okay, that has also carried. So just to clarify, your application on the windows has been denied with prejudice, so we look forward to hearing what you come back with next time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
See you in July. Okay, moving on to case number 4.
This is HPCA 23-00032 at 112 Northwest 25th Street, Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Mike Patterson, AMMP Studio, for Chelsea Banks for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct addition elective, 2, relocate mechanical equipment elective, 3, construct rear deck elective, 4, install fence elective, 5, construct front deck required, 6, construct accessory structure required, 7, construct front sidewalk elective, and 8, replace historic front landscape required. So this includes several new items that are proposed, as well as a number of items that had already been either initiated or completed that are indicated as required. There is an addition proposed at the rear of the property. It meets applicable guidelines as far as footprint, minimal visibility from the street, et cetera. The design is not, in staff's opinion, the design is not compatible with the architecture of the historic dwelling. And there are also some materials that do not appear to meet the guidelines for materials at new construction. So staff has recommended a continuance on the addition, and then mechanical equipment, fencing, et cetera, kind of all tied into, the approval of the addition. There is a proposal to construct a front deck that already exists. This is an item that may or may not actually, in reality, require a CA because it's pretty much removable. It's a very small little wooden deck that is sitting on on some blocks at the front, but included it just to capture that work. Staff has recommended approval of that piece. There is also an accessory structure in the rear that has been constructed that, again, not visible from the street, but may not meet applicable guidelines as far as design and materials for an accessory building. And I believe we've recommended continuance of that item. And then there is a proposed front sidewalk and front landscape that are not in keeping with front yard sidewalk landscape configuration along the block that staff recommended continuance of as well. I think that's just about everything.
Okay.
What is the sidewalk up in front, is that this part with the pavers that are in the dirt?
Do we want to have them come up and?
Just because I'm on this picture, I wanted to ask.
Let me. Yes, I believe so. It's kind of a paver, well, I think it's this, that's the tarp that they are proposing to put in a sidewalk of undefined material that is meandering.
Page 34.
Okay. Well, it seems the applicants are present. If you'd like to stand up and state your name and address for the record.
Sure. I'm Mike Patterson with AMP Studio, 3847 South Boulevard.
Chelsea Banks, homeowner, pictured above, 112 Northwest 25th Street.
Thank you for coming. So looks like we've got some things here that seem pretty easy to approve with some agreed upon conditions. I also, my takeaway to kind of echo Katie is that it's debatable whether the front porch needed to even be included in this submission, so we could probably have a pretty decent conversation about that too. The two biggest items of concern, it seems, are the sidewalk, just because the meandering nature of it is inconsistent with that stretch of the neighborhood, and also the lack of clarity on the materials being used when concrete is common in that area. And then the addition, some questions on the materials and structure itself and design itself. So, commissioners, any questions? I think, Katie gave a pretty good synopsis of the project as a whole.
First question, can we ask what materials going in where that sidewalk is here with the plastic?
Very happy to be recommended materials for the sidewalk. As you might notice, the flagstone that are currently laid out to demonstrate a proposed sidewalk they're found materials. So these were salvaged and very low cost. We're not the most, rich people, so we just try to find materials that are cost effective and will work. So if the choice or the recommendation is concrete, I would be happy to pour concrete.
I think the recommendation is typically concrete for a sidewalk in this neighborhood. So if you're on board with that, I think that is a big step towards getting that done. The other consideration was that, let me pull this back up, just the shape, the meandering shape of the sidewalk approach. It's typically going to be a very straight, plain approach in Jefferson Park. Are you agreeable to that?
I'm happy to sacrifice the creative outlet of trying to figure out how to go around those trees. So if it needs to be straight, I think I'll have to take out a tree, which is difficult.
We could definitely, we would not be able to just have your, typical straight-on sidewalk approach here. So
Sarah, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little curious about the front porch, and I know this is going somewhere else, but the front porch, which does not technically need approval, but we're going to include it anyway. And then this, if this was a material that was just gravel that was thrown down, it technically wouldn't need approval.
I think that's a great question for staff. It's a little over my head.
I just don't like setting this thing of we say something is not approvable and then tell somebody they have to get approved for it.
Yeah, so
I think it's a lack of permanence on the porch, correct? It's not
the-
attached.
The little deck to the side of the front porch is not attached to anything, correct?
Correct.
you, or maybe you and a couple of other people could pick it up and move it.
Yeah, so we installed the porch actually because we're one of the only houses on the block with no porch. So we reviewed, I didn't know we needed a certificate of appropriateness before installation, so a lot of this work we just did by looking at the guidelines and trying to interpret them ourselves. So we very specifically did not attach it to the structure, to the house itself. It's just on some large pavers, very easy to move. My husband and I installed it. So super easy, though I would like to keep a front porch because I do engage in a lot of conversation with my neighbors from that porch.
So I think that item, because it is so removable, truly could be stricken from the application. And we could say that, you know, putting that out there as a surface to sit on doesn't require review. When it comes to the sidewalk, you know, if someone just truly puts a paver on top of the grass and they can come back the next day and pick it up and move it, we don't really need to review that. But when you're starting to do kind of dirt work to prep for installation of paving stones, putting down sand that they're going to lay on, other preparation to make it more permanent and to make it less permeable, then that's where it requires review because it becomes a permanent feature.
What about if it were a planting bed and you outlined it with the stones?
Kind of a gray area.
Yeah.
I mean, we have
you threw
guidelines
mulch
about
down and you
Or
know,
basic
remove the
planting.
grass for your plant, you know, your planter bed. I don't know, it just kind of seems, yeah. like-
Definitely, the process you've described is the process we've undergone. Like, we've put ground cover down to ensure there's no grass coming up. We have, you know, we've done these things. Technically, everything is removable, like, for sure. I don't want to do that because I put a lot of work into it. So I understand I'm in the gray area, I guess is what I'm saying.
Is there any evidence of an original sidewalk here?
no.
The previous property owner had a small sidewalk that came from the front steps straight to the driveway. So from my understanding of my property, I've never had a sidewalk from the road to the front door.
Did you put sand down or anything, or did you just kind of?
No sand, just ground cover, and then the hard pack on top.
I mean, it feels
Feels
pretty
like a plant,
impermanent.
like a planting bed to me.
I
like the
tend
same
to
thing you would
agree.
do.
Yeah, and I'm not saying anything about whether it looks good or doesn't look good or should be there or not. That's not my point. I appreciate you looking at the guidelines. But I just wanted some clarification on when we should be looking at it not.
To me, this feels impermanent. If this shape were proposed and it were concrete, I would be a hard no. This feels pretty impermanent to me, and I'm not really seeing a big issue with it personally.
My intention, everywhere you see mulch to the left, is to include more planter beds there. So that would be more green space in the long run.
Anybody have questions on some of the other items? There's some, you know, kind of big ticket items here with an addition and everything. So do we want to kind of move on to discussing that?
I just have one, I just want clarification on the staff recommendation to approve item 5. Just so I'm clear, is it approving the deck that is there in the photos? Is that what there, because I'm not seeing any changes.
Yes.
I just want to make sure. So it's basically just going back to approve what's there.
Yes.
But that's what you said could be stricken from the record?
That's what I would personally say, because there's literally no prep work, no change to the site at all. That doesn't technically need a CA.
How do you make a motion to strike it if it's already there?
You don't have to make a motion for that. I mean, correct? We would just
And
record it.
the applicant could withdraw that one. That might be the cleanest for the applicant to
Okay.
withdraw number 5, construct front deck.
And this is this front deck is the item that is not attached in any way to the house.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I would think that would be wise to just remove that from our consideration. That way we're not setting any sort of precedent or anything in the future.
I agree.
Yeah, because I don't know that yeah, okay. I just need clarification there, that I wasn't missing that something else was being built, because technically the house does have a front porch. That there is a front porch there, so I wouldn't,
Which also has been altered, not by me, but by previous owners.
you know.
And yes, I think I know
I'm
where
with you.
if someone came in
Yes.
and proposed to build a more permanent deck, adjacent to their front porch. We would not be recommending approval of that. Because
Okay.
we would say that is a permanent change to a historic feature on the front elevation of the house. But I think, as has been done here, I don't see that as something that is permanent, is attached, is irreversible.
Yeah, because nothing would be stopping them from, if it wasn't like a wood deck, pouring, putting some pavers down or some gravel there and having a sitting area. I just
Correct,
want to make
yeah.
sure I'm understanding. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay.
So do we just need to ask the applicants if they will pull 5, 7, and 8?
Yep, so are you amenable to that just being recorded as withdrawn?
5, 7, and 8?
Well, so five's the deck.
7 and 8 are
I would say
the,
staff disagrees with the assessment that the amount of work that has been done to the topography doesn't require a CA, but
let's leave 7 and 8 on and vote on that, but let's remove 5. It is very impermanent. Okay, do you have language for them to withdraw?
yeah, I mean, I
Item
think
number
if
5?
you're.
Just an
if
indication of you're okay
indi-
with that?
I am amenable.
Okay.
All right.
Withdrawing this.
That's,
Great.
that's all we
Item
need.
5 is no longer up for discussion, it is withdrawn. Okay, so moving on to, we've discussed the sidewalk and the front landscape, and staff has recommended an approval on some of the smaller things such as the mechanical equipment, the fence, et cetera. Have they discussed the agreed upon conditions with you all that they've noted in this report?
So we first saw the addition in the last meeting, and it was approved without comment. But then we've since added the back deck, the front deck, the sidewalk, all that to this. I believe that's why we're here, but I'm happy to discuss anything I need to know.
So what happened in the previous meeting is that you had 2 different applications on, correct?
I don't know.
Or,
Should have only been one. We're on the consent docket for this one item.
I think
addition.
you had 2 applications on
I-
last month. Is that
I did,
correct?
one for a different project, and it was
Yes.
up for consideration.
So we had your project that should have been on the consent docket under individual consideration. This project was intended to be under individual consideration, but was put on the consent docket in error.
So they
And
should have
that's
been
why it is
switched?
back today for, yes.
She got her-
That's
Yes,
unfortunate.
Okay.
Okay. So we are just freshly discussing the addition, to be clear?
Correct.
Okay, got it. Let's hear about this addition.
Let's see, where do we want to start? We can start with, do you guys have drawings? Or we can look here at the back of the house. Chelsea and her husband Chad, they want to do a greenhouse on the back of their home. If you look in their backyard, they have a lot of plants, and they need a place to bring those plants in for the winter. And so their desire is to build a greenhouse on the left-hand side of the house that'll have a lot of windows, to have a lot of light, so those plants can thrive through the winter. And then with that addition, they also want to have a master closet and bath. That's a 3-bedroom home with a 1 bath, and they have a kid, and so it'd be good for the mom and dad to have their own bathroom. And so this greenhouse is an opportunity for them to also increase the square footage of the house to include the master bath and closet.
Okay, commissioners, any questions about this addition? I mean, it is very, very different from anything else we've seen in a historic neighborhood. Now, that said, we do ask for it to be clearly different from the original historic structure, so you've nailed it.
Thanks.
Sorry, I might have missed it in the staff report, but what is the lot coverage on this with the addition?
I think it was 48 original, 50 after the addition. And that's because we are moving a large piece of sidewalk. You can kind of see it here in front of the gate. That's being removed, and that'll be dedicated back to the yard. So it's a pretty minimal lot coverage increase.
Okay.
I certainly don't have an issue with the size of the proposed addition at all. I think that is very appropriate and clearly not infringing on the lot coverage, so I don't have any issue with the size. I mean, I think it is really out of character for a historic district, but I don't know that there's anything necessarily preventing us from moving forward on it, unless staff has noted something that I'm not seeing with regard to the design itself.
So staff had concern about some of the materials, some that are just simply not typical of the historic district, such as the stained wood versus painted wood, and then some that appeared to not meet the guidelines, the kind of stucco wall panel system. We would typically want to see a true stucco if you were going to go with that finish. I think the materials were kind of the main concern. It is wider than the existing dwelling, which the guidelines say that additions should not be wider than the historic building. There are, I think, portions of the historic building that bump out at various points, so it's not going to be visually discernible, but that is one guideline that doesn't appear to be fully met. And then just kind of along the same lines of the design not being typical of the architecture of the house of the surrounding district, it's your wall-to-window ratios, window proportions, all of those features.
What do the guidelines say about any new additions that don't match the original historic character? Because that was kind of my biggest concern, was that when I look at that back elevation, I can't tell that that is attached to a 1920s bungalow.
Yeah. We have a couple of different guidelines. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll to where it actually says it. That say it should be compatible in a number of different ways. Additions must be compatible in design, proportion, size, texture, color, and detail to adjacent buildings and streetscapes, and should be appropriate to the architectural style of the existing building. The incorporation of existing architectural features with new design elements can contribute added interest and compatibility.
I do feel like this is in pretty serious conflict with that. I could be alone in that. I actually like it. I think it's a neat concept. I just, going back to what the guidelines actually state, it feels a little concerning to approve something that seems really in conflict with that statement because it is not matching, proportions or styles.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just that it's like more than one or two elements that don't quite match up. Like, it'd be one thing if it was just the stucco system or just the shape of the windows or just the roof material, but the fact that it's 3 or 4 things that don't quite match the historic character is just what I struggle with a little bit.
The stucco is a traditional stucco application, just to be clear on what we provided. The Stowe power wall is mixed on site and troweled on like a traditional stucco.
Well, fair enough.
So and it's to match the color and texture, so it should be, from the street, look exactly the same.
That was going to be my question, is how visible will this addition be really from?
Hardly, if at all.
There, in the packet, there is, I think, a diagram. You will be able to see on the left-hand side where the greenhouse is at. You can see that from the street when you look down the length of the driveway, but that part of the addition is to match in color and texture with stucco of the existing house. So from a distance, you won't be able to tell that it was necessarily an addition there at that back corner.
So you're saying you will be able to see the addition butting out on that if you're looking at it on the left side, but you will not be able to tell that it is a new addition.
You'll be able to see it. You can see the street here. So if you're on the street looking this direction at this person taking the photo, that's the very corner of the house that you'll see in the addition. Beyond that, everything else is covered by street or the neighbors.
Okay. I don't know that there's anything in the guidelines to necessarily support this design. I think the size of the addition is really appropriate. Anybody have thoughts on the design and how it fits with this guideline? in particular?
I mean, per the guidelines, I don't think it meets the guidelines, but I think it's minimally visible, so I'm kind of,
It is minimally visible from the street. It is definitely maximally visible from elsewhere.
So I was just going to share my screen because to the
that's helpful.
east of the house, I'm not sure that that's truly a vacant lot, but there's definitely a much larger open space where I think there's more potential for visibility on that side.
Used to be a
That
house.
lot is going to be a house. It was recently approved by
Okay.
this commission
Okay.
last year. They've stopped construction, but it's a 2,500 square foot home. So
Okay.
my view is that by the time it's built, actually our addition should not exceed the length of the house next door.
Okay.
So I think it will cover all visibility
I
except for
remember
the
that
direct
one.
backyard.
It was pretty far back. I remember that conversation of that, how large it was, so.
And they have started, right?
They
The
have
pad prep's
started,
there.
yes.
And so
It's
once the house
been
is in
very
place,
delayed,
you won't be able to
yeah.
see it.
I don't have any comment on the addition, but can I just have clarification as I'm looking at both of these? On the item 6, construct an accessory structure, is this approving the structure that is existing in the back?
Yes,
currently?
that is
'Cause-
for an
okay.
already built accessory
Okay, so
structure.
this is one we would be going, that didn't have a CA originally.
Correct.
The back deck, there's a photo of it in here. It's been there for about 5 years.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Well, I would certainly support a motion to approve all of this with the exception of the addition if somebody has further, I mean, I don't know that I have necessarily an extremely strong opinion on the addition as proposed, but the rest of it I certainly see as approvable. And I can't make a motion.
What was the, on the accessory structure, you guys, I think the staff recommended continuance?
The materials aren't really typical of what we approve on an accessory structure. I think it has a metal, like a tin kind of metal roof. It is an accessory building. It's fairly small. It's not visible from the street. Fairly impermanent in
That's definitely
in
not
nature.
offending.
So,
It feels very impermanent. And
This
it's
is
not connected to the
impermanent, but
house.
the flower bed's not.
Yeah.
well, I just mean,
It's not connected to any fences or any, like literally we can move it. I don't
I'm
want to.
seeing
but
all of
literally.
this is pretty impermanent with the exception of the addition, I think is my takeaway. And that's why I'm inclined to support a motion to approve everything I'm seeing with the agreed upon conditions in the staff report and with the exception of the addition. I think the addition unfortunately probably needs some tweaking to fit with the guidelines, but again, I can't make the motions today, so
So what
defer
would
to
we
the rest of this
be,
commission.
so per our discussion, so we've taken item 5 off. So what items, so we're thinking continuance on item 1, construct addition. So are we leaning towards approval items 2, 3, 4, 6?
2, 3, 4 have recommendations for approval by staff with the
With agreed upon conditions.
agreed upon conditions.
Okay.
6, I think we just seem to think that it seemed pretty impermanent and we're okay with
We
it.
can approve, okay.
7, construct front sidewalk. I still kind of think that it's pretty impermanent and they haven't really altered it, I don't know. So that doesn't bother me. Replace historic front landscape. Get behind that. So, I mean, we are being pretty lenient on a lot of these things. So, I mean, maybe it would be beneficial to kind of consider some things on the addition that are closer to historic aspects of.
And I didn't see any, but are there any, I don't see any notes from the neighborhood, but is there anybody here? I guess you get to ask that, but.
Well, yes.
There is anybody here.
I guess my one
Sorry.
remaining comment on the sidewalk is that we fairly regularly advise people that your sidewalk must be perpendicular to the street, your sidewalk must be concrete. No, you can't have a brick sidewalk. No, you can't have granite pavers or all these other materials that people routinely request for their sidewalks. So if we are going to approve the walkway as proposed, staff would appreciate some good, meaty findings about why it's okay in this case, if we're going to continue to tell other applicants that they need to install a straight concrete sidewalk consistent with their neighbors.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, to me, the unique circumstance is that one does not exist and we don't know what it would have looked like, and there's no documentation of it. And the lack of permanence in the materials used, to me, feels akin to me going out and doing this in my backyard. So for me, those are the unique circumstances. If staff doesn't feel like those kind of stand the test of time, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I do hear what you're saying, Katie, because us approving this does open us up to a can of worms possibly, where everybody's like, well, I want a meandering, and I'm just gonna throw bricks down, I'm not gonna put sand down. That way it's not permanent, you know? So
I would also just kind of cite the location, and you know, we've said location is not a unique circumstances sometimes, but I would view this as kind of how we treat transitional zones, where we, you know, provide a little more leniency as homes are getting closer, you know, they're getting smaller and they're getting closer to maybe a retail-heavy area or a main street or something. I mean, because of the nature of this backing up basically to Broadway Extension, I think it's a little unique in and of itself.
I agree with that.
So are we leaning towards, because I'm happy to make a motion to approve. I just want to make sure I would like to make a motion to approve HPCA-23-00032. Let's see if I get it right. Items 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8.
A second.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Although I think I need to add with specific findings, and we have a few unique circumstances. I know, especially like for the deck. Or no, we took that out.
Do you
so
want
that
us to
wouldn't-
list those unique circumstances? Okay, so I think we eliminated the deck entirely, so the unique circumstances would be related to the accessory structure and the sidewalk and landscaping. So items 7, 8, and 6.
Am I repeating that?
And 7, 8, so 6, 7, and 8.
6 is the unique circumstance that we don't feel it's completely permanent. I think that's what we were saying
I think
on that
they're all, our
structure.
feeling is they're all pretty impermanent. So I think it could be the same unique circumstance that it is,
'Cause then
you
it's
know,
just
could be
the-
considered a transitional zone and is impermanent.
Correct. I don't have anything else to add.
It's a lot of items on this one.
Okay, so you're finished.
I'm done.
Would anyone like to second?
I think Patrick did.
Okay.
I think we're
Please
voting.
vote in Prime Cove. Okay, the motion carries, so you will need to visit with staff about those agreed upon conditions and make sure everybody stays on the same page for those. I think it was items 2 and 3, 2, 3, and 4
Because I think I need to now, we need to go back and tackle item 1.
on the addition,
Which
yes.
would be a continuance.
Yes.
And it would be up to you when you want to come back. So, because you've got to have items ready by next Tuesday for the June.
Yes, so if you were going to make revisions to the proposed addition in response to comments from the commission, comments in the staff report, then we would need those revised drawings by Tuesday of next week for the June 7th meeting, or by essentially the next meeting deadline for the July 5th meeting.
So what are those comments on item 1 that we need to address?
So what I heard and what is in the staff report is kind of the overall form of the addition, the roof form, the variety and types of building materials, window proportions. I think Caitlin had several items that she noted. If you want to rattle those off again that were.
I mean, you got what were my main concerns, which were the roofing profiles and the windows, the patterns and sizes, and then material.
Well, all due respect, we've pushed this addition around a lot of different ways to satisfy our request to live in this home for the next 30 years, and I do not think there is a roof line that is different from this one that will do that. I would be more willing to just not have my addition and not go through this process than to try to refit it to our current choices for the house. Because of the green room, because of the bathroom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We can definitely change the pitch over the bathroom side to try to match it, but I also feel very confident that I'm going to be in this home for a long time, and there isn't a lot of historical nature about my existing home that I think is worth keeping. Sorry, I recognize this as historic preservation, but even matching the windows to accommodate my green room would sacrifice the point of my green room.
Well, and that was a question I had was, you know, have we reviewed a greenhouse before and accommodated the purpose of it as being completely different from the purpose of a living space?
I mean, we've approved numerous freestanding
Right.
greenhouses. We've not, to my knowledge, approved a attached. I mean, we've approved sunrooms. We've approved screened-in porches and sunrooms and lots of different features like that that were found to be compatible. And I think, as was said by the commission too, it's not necessarily that every single component of it has to match. Having some elements that are distinct from the historic structure helps to differentiate. It's just the kind of cumulative effect of everything not being consistent and compatible with the historic structure that starts to make it feel like it doesn't belong there. You know, I would say we can continue it and you could ultimately just withdraw it, but perhaps to continue it, keep those options open, talk with your architect, and see if there's something that you can come up with that gets a little closer to what the commission has discussed and still meets your needs.
So specifically the roof line in the windows is what I'm understanding as
And materials.
issues? And materials we can definitely reframe.
Yeah.
Just to get clarity on the mistake from the April meeting, were you all able to present at the April meeting for this project?
No, so it was on the consent docket
Right.
with a recommendation to continue.
Okay.
It was just
So have they lost a content?
no, that did not count.
Okay,
as a-
I just
No,
want
but
to make sure we've not.
I have lost over a month.
Well,
Waiting.
I just want to make sure you haven't had already strike one and now we're on to strike two.
Yeah.
I was under the impression, though, that because we were approved on the consent docket, that was approval, so that is a little frustrating for my understanding of the situation.
Was it recommended for approval on the, because you
I think
just
it
said
was-
continuance?
I think it was recommended for continuance on the consent docket. I mean, it was basically the staff report you have in front of you now.
Okay.
And yes, and staff feels very badly about that mix-up happening, so.
So I think what I'm hearing is we need to continue it to July, and if you decide to go a different route, absolutely, that is your decision. Is that?
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. So we've got an addition, we need to make some changes to the addition before it meets the needs of this historic preservation for me to be able to add it to my home that I'll be living in for the next 30 years. The changes that I've made over the last times that I've been living in the house have been approved now, so I can continue existing as I currently am without any changes. And when I'm considering adding this sidewalk, it needs to be concrete. Is that the,
No, we approved your sidewalk just like it is.
okay, so I can use stones instead of, because it's not gonna stay tarp like this. My intention was to use the flagstones as pictured in the backyard currently.
Provided you're not concreting those in, I think we all agreed that it was impermanent.
Okay,
If you want to concrete them in, we need to have a different discussion, but if
Got
you're
it.
not, and it's a landscaping feature, I think we're all on board with that being impermanent.
okay,
So I understand our next steps are
It's
to
just
meet
the
with the
addition.
staff about your addition,
yes.
and then we'll come back.
Yep, and
To
meet
the
with
board.
staff about the agreed upon conditions stated in items, sorry, my screen is now blocked, but I think it was items 2, 3, and 4 related to some really simple changes about the fence and the mechanical equipment.
Yeah, I think those are just about making sure it's screened.
Yeah, 2, 3, and 4 are easy, that's not a problem.
And
So
they're relative to the addition, though. None of those will happen without the addition, so I'm glad we have approval on them, but I definitely need approval on the addition before they are relevant, so.
So are we moving to continuing to the July meeting? Is that what?
I assume, because I don't
Okay.
know how soon we can meet with the staff.
Okay.
Or even how soon we can figure
Then
out
I
what
move
we're next, yeah.
Then I move continuance of HPCA-23-00032, item 1, to the July 5th Historic Preservation Commission meeting.
I think we agreed it was the 6th, but
So it's posted as the 5th.
Okay,
That's what
5th.
the schedule says. It's the 5th at, oh, and now I closed it out.
July 5th.
3:30?
3:30?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, would anyone like to second?
Second.
Okay. If you would all vote in PrimeGov, please. Okay, we hope to see you back in July.
All right, thank you.
All right, moving on to, sorry, my screen is still blocked. Are we on item 5? Item 5.
Okay, HPCA 23-00036 at 529 Northwest 19th, Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Jonathan Ranke, Living Spaces for Amanda Sharp for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace back deck with back porch elective. This is a house that was pretty dramatically renovated a couple of years ago, and they installed a back deck. It is on a corner lot. They have now proposed to replace that back deck with a more substantial back porch, extending the roof of the non-historic addition out over the back deck. Staff is concerned about the impact on kind of the visibility and the views into the lot, into and down the block by the installation of that roof form. Typically on a historic porch, we see a break in the roof from the existing house to a porch. So we did recommend continuance on this to ask for some revisions to the design of that back porch.
Okay, applicant is present. Could you please state your name and address for the record?
John Reinke, and I'm the contractor.
Okay, what's your address?
I'm just here to address staff concerns, and we do have specifically regarding the second point, which is the visibility through the lot. And last night I met with the owners, and we took some pictures and did some Photoshop to kind of show what it would look like, specifically from this vantage point that you have currently or up, which is the Dewey side of the property. And if we could put it up on the screen, I've got it on digital form. Then you guys
We
can
are
see
not
it.
allowed to use foreign flash drives, et cetera, on
Oh,
city
Yeah. So,
machines. I
yeah,
apologize.
unfortunately, I didn't get the image until this morning, and so I wasn't able to get it.
I don't think he
Yeah.
can walk around and show us, can he?
No.
No.
So, generally
Right.
speaking, and I know that we can't bring things to the table to show around and things like that. So, I mean, like samples of materials and things of that nature. So, I can bring it up on my laptop if you'd be interested in seeing the document. So, but all it really does is it shows in shadow form kind of what the overall roof line would look like, extending from the existing roof line towards the garage. And so, and with the dramatic things that had already been modified that were in part of Katie's introduction to this topic, it doesn't really change this property dramatically, specifically with regard to what has already been done. So, and in review of the staff findings, I was looking at this, pretty closely, and the main thing is this item number 2, that the proportion and design of the proposed porch, particularly the roof, may not be compatible, and then the scale and the historic character of the district, which is really something that the board has to decide. So.
So to be clear, you met with the homeowners, and the renderings that you have, are they different than what we're looking at? Did you make some changes?
It doesn't change anything.
They're just-
If you go back to the, let's see here, on the application, We have the rendered documents in the architectural form, which is page 9 of 38, and which is obviously a line drawing of what the house looks, by itself, but not in context to the yard and things. What we put together on the flash drive here, and I'd emailed the staff this morning, but obviously that's maybe irrelevant, is basically just we took a picture of it from the Dewey and then sketched in what this would look like in terms of its mass in the property, so that you could give a sense for how much additional space that it would take up in a real view of the property, if that makes sense.
Could you clarify for me? I just have two pretty specific questions related to the size.
Okay.
If you were to construct this porch and add a roof line to it, what is the amount of space that remains between the garage roof line and this new roof line?
I can answer that question. The space that remains that's actually not too bad. So it's a little bit larger than the picture that I've got. So
Well, the commission has that if you want to reference.
okay, which
I mean,
page
am
is
I
that?
right in assuming it's already like less than 10 feet from the edge of the porch to the, I'm just trying to make sense of the measurements on here, and I know that's not something
Right.
you would always have included, but it's
I think
looking to
the-
me like maybe it's less than 10 feet as it is from the edge of the deck to the,
I think the existing site plan shows it as 13 feet from the
13
back
feet.
of the deck to the
and
garage.
we're increasing the depth of the deck, well, we'll call it the deck for now, but increasing the depth by 2.5 feet?
That's with the addition of the roof line, yes.
So the roof line is 14 feet is the roof line included.
Right,
So we're increasing it by 2.5 feet, so we would be at 11.5 feet
correct.
between the garage and that's not including the garage roof line. So really, we're like 9 feet between these two roof lines.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's about right.
Okay, my other question was, just to make sure I'm reading this correctly, the current deck is roughly, let's see, like 22 feet by 11.5 feet, and it
That's
was
correct.
27 feet by 14 feet?
Yeah, and just
Okay.
extending it across the back of the addition.
Okay,
So if you look at some of the pictures of the back of the house, it really makes sense in terms of use of space and how it works, specifically with the window on the east side.
I'm not seeing an issue with increasing the width, but I am struggling to think about only 9 feet between the edge of these two roof lines. It feels really bulky. It feels like it's kind of dominating the lot, and certainly on a corner, it's extremely visible. Anybody else?
Refreshing up here, if that helps.
By the way, what Angela just brought up to me, that she approximated what my rendering does, is page 29 of 38 on the overall document, on the submittal. So if you want to reference that page in particular.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, mine is struggling to load. Is
Mine's-
there any way we could see that up on
Mine's
the
not loading.
presentation screen?
Mine is also not loading, but this happened earlier. You just have to give it a minute and let it catch up. Oh, okay. Yeah. So our technical support says refresh if you're having difficulties.
Yeah, I closed mine out and opened it back up again, and it was just fine.
Gotta love technical support.
That made mine worse.
Or not.
Any comments from the commissioners? Questions?
Blank comments.
It's too bad I can't cast to your screen. I've got my, got my Photoshop document here.
Mine is working, but
Sarah, I can share your screen, actually, I think. Maybe. It's going to just implode now.
Mine is working, and it's a lot of, it's a lot of roof line.
it's a lot of mass for a corner property.
Yeah.
There we go.
It's a good call.
Okay, so still generally what we were looking at on the
Which is even more weird.
the last page I was referencing, that we're going to get to roughly 14 feet of additional depth and still be left with roughly 9 feet of clearance between the two roof lines.
Yeah, and so on this particular picture, my companion was just up here, that's the homeowner, and she was pointing out that, how to describe this? The staining pattern on the boards, there's the fourth substantial light massing. Nah, it's not really good. Anyway, if you brought up Angela's drawing of the 12 feet again.
Okay, I can share
Maybe.
mine. There.
There it is. So, as we rendered it out, it was about 3 boards to the right of where she's got that, that vertical line at. And so, and of course, this is, both this and our rendering are struggling with perspective because, it's obviously going to the vanishing point there. The other thing is on the crowding of the roof lines, that 2-story roof line for the garage is so much substantially higher, and it doesn't feel to me like it would be a tremendous impact. So,
To me, it's more just the line of sight. So it's not necessarily that roof line on the garage, just kind of the mass of things all in a line on that corner.
Right.
It's already, honestly, it's already a little tighter than you typically would see, even with an addition. So I think that's where I think it's a beautiful house, and it's, a lot of good things to be said about it. I just don't know that, do you know what this puts the lot coverage at? I'm assuming it's kind of
we
close.
did do the
since you're-
calculation, yeah.
It's probably not a
So,
huge increase because they're increasing the footprint of the deck.
Right, I think it was pretty minimal because the deck is barely getting any larger.
But
Right.
in theory, this already has probably a lot of lot coverage.
I think part of that is the visual line that you were looking at. The roof line goes, and then you can see the garage roof. It looks like there's 6 inches between the two, and I think visually that makes you think they're a lot closer than they are.
Well, I drive by this house just about every day. It's beautiful, but it is. I would say that what we're looking at feels pretty accurate.
I think it's also aerial too. If you're looking at it, there's just a lot of roof with that addition on there. And yeah, from the side, you're going to see it. It might be 9 feet, but in passing, it's going to look even closer. And I realize it's not much larger than the deck. You just can't see the deck from the street, so it breaks it up above the fence.
yeah.
It would even be one thing if this wasn't on a corner lot, but it's so visible. That's kind of what I struggle with.
Sorry, I'm still struggling to get back and forth on my computer.
Yeah, no problem.
There we go.
Is the 1-story portion original?
No, it is not.
So that was addition.
It's a
Yeah.
pretty recent addition. that's what I was trying to pull up, was the last CA on this. It
There-
looks like 2017.
So I think there was an existing exceptionally incompatible addition there in 2016, 2017, and we approved a CA to remodel that existing addition. This, if you look back at the county assessor photos on this house, it is unrecognizable.
Yeah, it's dramatic, for sure.
I don't see any, but any comments from the neighborhood? Are there any, I'm not missing anything, am I? I don't have any on here.
I didn't get anything from Mesta Park this month.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have I can't give you a formal thing, but I'm working for the Earlies across the street, and they think it's a great idea. So,
Are there any residents, is anybody here that wishes to speak on this item?
from like neighbors,
Yeah, any
Yeah,
members of
just-
the public who care to
yeah,
comment,
just-
have
yeah.
discussion? Is the commission at a point where you all could make a motion one way or another? Or do you have more questions for
I
the
would make
applicant?
a motion to continue the item, but that's just my opinion. I think it just needs to be cut down just a little bit in size.
Was that an official motion, or are you?
No, I'm just, that's,
You're in support of one?
yeah, if you
Okay.
you mean to make it, that's gonna be my motion, but
so I can say that, you know, reducing the north-south dimension of the porch is essentially a deal killer, you know, because at 12 feet for a enclosed area, because this is already going to be stepping down from the existing floor to get to our current height. And so we have, if you look at one of the pictures for the existing conditions, you can see that the height of the deck is currently stepping down from the house. And so you lose space there already with, your practical space already with being able to get to the deck from the home. So if we were to shrink it, by something that would matter, like say 2 or 3 feet, then we'd be losing a lot of usable space. So something that we would be interested in considering if you guys are up for it, and I wanted to see how you guys were leaning before we brought this up, but we could bring the overall addition down and differentiate the roof lines. So, where we could come with the roof line below the soffit of the existing roof, so that we would actually have a more clear delineation. You see in this picture right here where you've got the header of the 2 windows and the door in the center. So we could come below that level and reduce the impact of that extension. So that's something that we talked about and would be willing to consider as a reasonable, so while still being able to try to achieve what we're trying to achieve.
It feels like you start to put an addition to an addition and add another addition at that
I think
point.
they'd look like stairs.
Yeah.
We've had several of these come up, and unfortunately, it's kind of, while it wasn't y'all necessarily who did this addition, you're like a little cursed by your own, the benefit of having an addition is great, but then you're kind of locked into that in the backyard and where the lot coverage gets tricky and just the massing on the side of this. So,
Yeah.
a problem of your own creation to a certain extent, because it's lovely to have this addition, but it does eat up some really valuable yard space.
Yeah.
I'll just note, we did get comments from Mesta Park, and I'm sorry I don't think they've made it into your stack here. We might not have gotten those forwarded along. But on this, they just said we concur with all of the considerations and staff's findings on this item.
I'm sorry, who was that?
That was
Mesta
from the
Park.
Mesta Park Neighborhood Association.
They're in agreement with staff
Yep.
report on a continuance?
Yep.
Okay.
And I would just say, as far as, I think without seeing it, without drawing up some different options, I think it's hard for staff or the commission to advise much beyond what's been discussed here as far as what would be a solution. I think that's, what we have to do with a continuance is see what other options could work.
So, and I heard one option that, of reducing the north-south dimension. So is there anything else that you're interested in us considering? Or that you guys think might work? And I know I realize very fully that you guys are in a tricky position of, well, and we've said it before. So, but, it'd be good to have something to go on.
I think,
I would want to see lot coverage too, just as it exists, and I know it would only minimally increase, but I would like
Yeah.
to see that.
Well, the lot coverage is, actually had that pulled up. So, because that is addressed on the site plans.
Okay, I can find that.
I think, without saying what I think you should do, I think the concerns we've heard are the distance or the perceived distance between the porch and the garage, and the continuous massing and height of the roof. So I think
Okay,
those
so-
two factors, whatever, whether that's a different roof form, whether that's reducing the height, whether that's reducing the depth, kind of exploring all of those options.
Right, so maybe a single pitch roof
well,
instead of a
I think the commission we've kind of gone around and around about this one for a long time, so I think it would be better if we did a continuance and allow you to talk to staff.
Okay.
Just for time, because we've got
Yeah.
a lot more on our plate. So
Yep.
I'll make a motion for a continuance do you want it to the July or June meeting?
This is May, correct? So, and I think let's say July for the moment, and we'll see if we can't make it happen.
Okay. Move for a continuance on HPCA 23-00036 to the July meeting for item number 1.
And I'll second.
Okay, thank you. If you would all vote in PrimeGov. Okay, the motion has passed. We will see you in July.
Okay. The answer on the question, the space usage was 31% now and 32%.
Yeah, I was
So-
just actually looking at that, but I'm
Yeah.
not able to reconcile that because that would be a very tiny, tiny
It
house.
is basically nothing in terms of the changed usage. So.
Okay, so moving on to, let's see, we have continued case number 6 to the July meeting. So moving on to case number 7.
So HPCA 23-00043 at 800 Northwest 19th Street, Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Megan Brent, Laud Studio for Matthew Vaughn for a certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace concrete front steps with new concrete steps and sidewalk, elective. 2, replace concrete steps along driveway with new concrete steps north of driveway, elective. 3, relocate AC unit, elective. 4, modify existing porch railing, elective. 5, install new railing at new steps at front and side, elective. 6, install concrete steps and railing at side entrance to house, elective. 7, install cedar screen for trash and AC units, elective. 8, alter front yard to acquire landscape beds, elective. And 9, install flagstone pathways around front and side of house, elective.
Okay, well, you don't look like Megan, but you must be the applicant. Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, this Brent Wall, 220 Northwest 13th, Suite 1, Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's sort of two staff members kind of got their names squished together, so.
Well, welcome, Brent
yeah,
Wall.
Yeah.
Okay, so lots of items to consider on this proposal. Do you want to this is a bigger project, do you want to kind of just give a brief overview of the scope of it?
Yeah, hopefully, whenever we talk about these things, hopefully you kind of get into our process and just mindset and the things that we're trying to consider as we submit these applications to you, because they all are bespoke and individual and interesting in their own right. So this is a corner lot right across from Mesta Park. It's actually a pretty small footprint for the size of the house. I mean, It has a front yard, it has a really severe steeply sloping lawn in the front, and then the back is really tight. They do not actually have a garage, and they park basically heading west off of Chartel. And so they're pretty cramped for parking. They're pretty cramped for space in general. So as we approached it, the front steps are kind of wonky and sort of unlevel. So some of this is just sort of, ongoing, just the steps have been there for 100 years. It's time to replace them. Adding a handrail where one is not present for safety. So in looking in the staff recommendations, it looks like there's quite a few things that are approvable or can go through without much discussion. And so I definitely just wanted to jump into those items that were continued. We are proposing to move a air conditioning condenser unit sort of off of the east facade and kind of around to the south and hide it a little bit. What we've really tried to do is just kind of give them some logical ways to kind of move around the house. Right now, if they park and go to the front door, there are steps, but they basically don't have a sidewalk that gets them to the front door. So they have to walk on the street sidewalk to get up to the front door, or obviously come in through the back door. So a lot of this is just trying to give them some ways to just kind of navigate their property in a way. So we are proposing a new set of steps on the end of the porch on the south and east side of the house. We're assuming there were not steps there before. There is a door on that side of the house, so it seems logical that you would be able to kind of come out of that door and go to the driveway in a safe manner. And also we're proposing to remove a set of steps that are adjacent to the driveway, which honestly I have no idea how those would have ever gotten approved. They're more than 30 inches above the adjacent driveway, and that's a real safety condition. So if anything today, if we can figure out a way to make those steps more safe, that would be very appreciated by the homeowners. There are some items on landscaping. We're not proposing to adjust any of the grades around the house, and so if that item is not one that I think really needs a lot of debate. I mean, we could leave it grass and then get approved, and they could come back and plant it later. I mean, honestly, it's as long as we're not adjusting the grade, it's really not kind of a thing. And then we did have a flagstone walkway around the house. Speaking with staff, we totally agree that could be an antique brick walkway, and kind of honestly just wish we would have done that from the very beginning. But we're still learning all these things and what's the most appropriate way to approach things. So either concrete or brick is totally fine with us on that item. So that would be basically 8 and 9. We're totally agreeable to make any change on the materials there. And then 4 and 6 and then item number 2, would definitely like to just kind of get your thoughts on ways that we can make this work. We are proposing new steps on the east side, and what that would do, that would align better with the porch and a potential set of steps that would get you up to the upper level, and then create a landscaped area in between the bed and where the drop-off is to the driveway. So we're not changing any of the slope. We're just kind of shifting the stairs over and making those a little safer and a more direct pathway. So I don't think my clients are incredibly adamant about having the steps off of the porch. I think they could live without that. I think the steps that are currently there and are unsafe are something that really needs to be addressed, and we would like some guidance on how we can kind of make that move and make you all happy on that. So.
Okay, thank you. I know that one question I had when you were giving your overview is just clarity on, so you are not talking about regrading or changing the slope of the yard in any way?
No.
So if they are not regrading, is the landscape reviewable for us, or is that irrelevant to this commission?
So I think staff's big concern is that from my understanding from the drawings, we are losing the sod, the grass, on some of the steepest slopes of the yard and are going back with landscape material and with, I don't know if it's mulch, I don't know what and so when you take away the grass that is anchored into the soil, and I'm not a landscape architect, but I mean, our observation with these properties over and over and over again is when you take that grass away, there's nothing anchoring that really steep rolling terrace in place, and then you get some big rains, and all of it starts to wash away, and all of a sudden you're coming back in and asking to put in a retaining wall because there's nothing holding up that slope. So seeing, even if the actual topography of the site is not changing, that extensive of a loss of the landscape material to staff kind of has the same effect as altering the topography. We were also just pondering earlier, you can see in the rendering the mulch along the planting beds along the sidewalk, and I don't see what's holding the mulch in. I'll share my screen. You can see what I'm
Oh, it's actually my second question.
So where it meets the sidewalk, it looks like it's just this perfect magical line of is there going to be some sort of edging there?
It's a rendering. It is. It's a perfect world, right?
You're going to hot glue
It is
it
actually a
all
magical
together
line.
along the.
Yeah. If we needed some sort of steel edging or something there, we could totally do that. And I would say too that we don't recommend this for everybody, but the severity of that slope, it's super steep, which is, it causes concern, but it's also really difficult to mow. So part of it was, as an ethos of our company is if grass is not serving a purpose, then let's figure out maybe some other ways to do something that provides a little bit more ecosystem services and beauty to the neighborhood. So that's why we go to these things. We would certainly come in with plants that were embedded in some sort of a landscape fabric that would be pinned down and try to help erosion control. We employ several different methods of coconut fiber matting or geotextile matting that's pinned into the soil and helps with that problem. And if you have a big rain, it might wash out, but you just kind of have to be persistent and just keep going with it. And you let the root systems establish. You keep on top of it, and over time, it'll hold that slope. So, but yes, some sort of containment at the bottom would certainly be easy to add to the project.
And would that need to be reviewed, whatever the containment element was?
Yeah, I think we would want to, depending on what it is and how it's installed, we would need to document that.
I do have slight concerns, just like from a safety standpoint, of metal edging right on the sidewalk. When I think of all the kids like riding their bikes and rollerblading and whatever beside it, that kind of concerns me, like how sharp the edges. I know my kids have missed faces narrowly on my landscape edging.
Yeah, we use quite a few different products. We use one that's kind of a composite wood and plastic product that is a little softer and a little bit more flexible and less sharp, if that would be preferred.
So in something like that would or would not need to come before the commission?
So, yeah, I think any kind of permanent material that's going in that location, particularly right there at the sidewalk, right there butting up against the right-of-way, we're going to want to review that and know what that is and what it looks like.
Okay.
Review what we're putting in landscaping?
Well, if there's a permanent edging holding the landscaping in place, like we have guidelines about landscape edging and how tall they can be and what materials are appropriate. Like if you're building a raised flower bed, that sort of thing.
I don't honestly have concerns about the rest of the project at all. I think while the addition of the stairs on this side, sorry, the screen changed. While the addition of the new set of stairs off of that, I guess it's at the south edge of the porch, while it is different from what was there historically, I can certainly see the need, and I think that does dictate a unique circumstance. I also think it's pretty minimally visible, partly due to the fact that this yard does have such a steep slope.
Yeah, and again, I think if they had a little more traditional parking situation, we probably wouldn't push for it at all. It's just that they park literally right there, and we're just trying to get them like a really easy way to get up to the house and get in.
Yeah, I know that I've seen this on several other corners in Mesta Park, so it seems like a common problem and a common solution.
Yeah, and I agree that what's there at the back right now is unsafe and frankly weird and needs to be addressed.
So those are stairs that, to our knowledge, have been there for a very long time, and fairly recently they got a CA, or I think the previous owner got a CA to replace them in kind, and just go back and put them back as they were, with a little kind of curb along the side of the driveway. So, you know, staff was kind of inclined to say, you know, keep them where they are, because that is reflecting a historic condition at the site, but perhaps there's a middle ground of keeping the stairs adjacent to the driveway, but making them a little more user-friendly and not such a safety hazard.
Does staff have an idea of how long we think these stairs have been there? I mean, when you say, you know, a very long time, were they added in 1950 or are they from 1910?
Angela, do you have any idea?
I don't remember. I did look it up, I promise, but I do not remember.
I think they appeared to be the same age, the same time frame as very old concrete in the driveway, which a lot of those are, you know, 50 plus years old. So I don't know. We have some other driveways throughout the districts with really odd kind of incorporated step conditions that we presume to be very, very old, if not original. But no, we don't have it. We wouldn't have anything that would document precisely when those were installed.
And Katie, what was the item 4, modify existing porch railing? That is for continuance, but reading in here, I just need some clarity on what exactly.
So one of the things that they are proposing to do is, where you can see here the handrail that comes down at the porch, up against the house. Right now, the porch just stops there. The railing connects from that pillar to the wall. And they're proposing to remove the porch railing that connects to the wall and put steps down that currently don't exist, that would go down to those stairs to the driveway. So you could come from the driveway up and go up that back kind of side/back step onto the wraparound porch. There is a door there in that bay. Based on photos we have, it was added sometime in the last 15. It's not a historic door. That would have been a window. You know, it would have been windows on all the sides of the bay. But there's a door there now. And so it was a continuance. The guidelines tell us that's not an appropriate place to alter a porch railing, to add a new feature. If it was mid-block, staff would have no problem with it. With it being on a corner, it's visible. We just needed that to be taken under consideration.
Is it the railing going down the steps as well? I'm looking at both railings in this
Yes,
photo.
so the concern is more the historic porch railing and modifying that, because the guidelines tell us not to change historic features. Where there are stairs, staff has no issue with installing an appropriate handrail.
Okay, so does staff not find that railing there to be appropriate? Would you want something that matched more what is currently on the porch right now?
I think the design of the railing is appropriate, and I think it's actually preferable to have it not match the porch and be distinctly a new feature. If the commission determines that it's appropriate to alter the porch railing and install new stairs, then staff has no issue with the railing.
I feel like this is a really minimal change compared to some of the things we've looked at even today. I mean, this is just not something to me that I'm ever going to walk by. I mean, I'd walk or drive by this house most days, and I don't think that this is something that I would ever really notice as really having disrupted the historic character of the house or of the porch.
I mean, I think it's a much better alternative to the condenser unit that was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, once some of that landscape comes out, that stair's probably going to disappear. So are there any comments from the neighborhood on this one? Because this is also messed up, so I'm wondering if there was.
This is 43. We concur with all the considerations and staff-specific findings and recommendations, and particularly object to the proposed changes to the landscape elements and topography. The rolling terraces, among other things, contribute to the historic character of the property and the district.
So what I think we may be looking at is, with certainty, reviewing items 8 and 9 again. Does that seem, I mean, it feels like that staff still had some questions, seems like materials needed to be reviewed.
And it seems like that's what
and
the
that's what
neighborhood
Mesta Park
particularly
said
had
too.
said. Yeah.
I don't have any issue with the rest of it, and I don't feel an attachment to the driveway stairs. But I think without having actual knowledge of their historic nature, it's really hard for me to look at something that's pretty unusable and say, yes, we need to maintain that because at one point somebody thought that was practical. I don't think it's contributing a whole lot.
I agree. Maybe we just,
Me too.
maybe we continue the item talking about the landscape at the front and see what we can do to help mitigate some of staff's concerns about erosion and certain materials down at the front. But otherwise, I would be fine with approving everything else with staff's conditions.
So could I move can I make a motion?
Yes.
And I move approval HPCA-23-00043, items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Did I get that right? Is that what we were saying?
Yeah, because 8 and 9. would
Yes,
be
8 and
continued.
9 to be continued.
Was there anything I need to point out in that staff report, specific findings or anything in that?
Just include.
So I think the only thing was, sorry, I just shared my screen again unintentionally. I think the only thing that had a condition, there's a condition on the, so right now the screening for the HVAC is just a fence panel directly on the east. But if you're coming from the south, it appears that it's not going to provide any screening at all. So we had just had a condition for the applicant to work with staff and make sure that HVAC equipment was adequately screened.
So I'll add into that motion with specific findings and conditions as mentioned in the staff report.
Is the applicant open to those agreed upon conditions and working with staff to check that box?
Yep, so on item 1, we need to provide a little bit more information on the screen returning back to the west and kind of covering up the AC unit.
Correct.
And then items 8 and 9, additional information. Is that correct?
8 and 9, we're just continuing.
Continue.
The
Okay.
screening
Yeah,
on the
so we're
HVAC.
accepting conditions on number,
So,
Yeah.
correct.
yes, we agree.
Conditions on 7.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes. We agree.
Okay,
A second.
okay. Would you all please vote in Prime Gov? Okay,
Then
the
I think we
motion
need
has passed.
we need a second motion, right, for
For
continuance?
8 and 9.
And we just need to know what meeting you'd like to move that to, June or
We'll-
July?
We'll take the June meeting. There's somebody at the office watching this right now, and they've already finished, so we'll have it in.
Well, and everybody else wanted
Technology,
July,
look-
so that's going to be a long
efficient.
one.
Look at that.
We'll take the June meeting.
Okay,
Okay, is that June 7th? So I'm going to move continuance of item HPCA-23-00043, items 8 and 9 to the June 7th commission meeting.
great. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, could everybody please vote? Okay, we will see you back in June, and good luck on the other aspects of your project.
I'll actually see you in 3 items from now.
Okay, I'll see you in 3 items.
I just want, I need to leave at 5:30, so I know we have,
Okay,
I make quorum.
Yes. So I will just say on that note that we have several more items on the agenda that have lots of moving parts and lots of things that are recommended to have changes made, to have conditions. And we'll ask applicants and the commission to kind of give quick direction and decisions on if something needs to be a continuance, then we're not going to discuss ad nauseum.
Okay, all right, moving along. Case number 8.
I'm still talking. HPCA 23-00044 at 621 Northwest 18th Street, Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Fallon Magnus Creative Home Design for David DeWitt for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace front door elective, 2, replace front window elective, 3, replace side door with window elective, 4, demolish first floor addition elective, 6, reduce window sizes at all windows on first floor northeast room to accommodate counter height elective, 7, construct 2-story garage elective, 8, construct fence, 9, pour driveway and sidewalks elective, and 10, replace or repair siding and trim at house as necessary elective. And I'll just quickly note the things that staff has recommended for continuance are replacement of the front door and the front window, items 1 and 2, because those are historic features and we have not seen anything to indicate that they warrant replacement. Demolishing the first floor addition, and that is only because we have a replacement addition coming and staff would prefer not to approve tearing off part of the house without knowing what's going back in its place. Construction of the 2-story garage, because as we've seen on some other cases, it does not meet guidelines for size and height. And then I think everything else was recommended for approval, although I'll note that the driveway and sidewalks are likely contingent upon construction of the garage.
Okay. I would say that I concur with staff on this one.
Yeah.
It feels like there's kind of too many moving pieces to just go with any sort of agreed upon changes made in this meeting.
I would ask the applicant to, if she wants to make responses.
Yes, and state your name and address for the record. I'm sorry.
That's what I was waiting for.
We
Fallon
know you,
Magnus.
so.
I know. Fallon Magnus, 733 Northwest 22nd Street. Yeah, I have down that the items 3, 6, and 10 are recommended for approval, and that's really all we're expecting today anyway, so that's fine. I did want to just really quickly, so the 2-story garage, it's not really 2 stories, kind of like 1.5. And that was my suggestion to the client because we don't have any abutting, literally no abutting garages at all, let alone any that are 2-story or that exceed the footprint allowable in the guidelines. So that one I just kind of wanted to really quickly find out from commission if that's something, because it's 1.5 story, the lot kind of grades down towards the back a little bit, so it's not going to be tall, like super tall. So we just kind of wanted to get a little bit of feedback just on that item to find out if that's something that we need to completely, redesign and come back with. Same thing with the garage door facing the east instead of facing the back of the lot, it's facing the side of it. And that had more to do with just maneuverability and accessibility. There's not really enough room to have a garage and then be able to pull your car out, load the kids in. Like once you pull out of that garage, you are out in the alley. So that was kind of the reasoning for that. So that's really the only thing that I need commission's feedback on besides the things that were recommended for approval.
Regarding the garage, I don't know that I've ever seen one done like that that's not on a corner lot.
I've seen a couple in the area. There's one down the alley from me where it's very strange, like they kind of load from the side. So they do exist out there.
Yeah,
I think I would have a hard time with that personally, but
I can only think of one, and it was completely built with no building permits or CA. So we didn't review it. That's the only one I can think of, but that's not to say there aren't others that have that configuration. And I think, possibly that orientation in the side yard could be appropriate, but perhaps the paving could be reduced. I think that's part of staff's concern, is that it's a significant amount of concrete. And then on the 1.5 story, we talked about this a little earlier, but it looks like the height from the floor to where the wall meets the roof is 4 feet, and code says 1.5 is 3 feet. So it's And then if you look at where it meets the roof of the dormer, which takes up the majority of the structure, it's 6 feet. So
Okay.
I think it would, to qualify as a 1.5 story, it would have to come down.
Okay. That's helpful, thank you.
The interesting thing on the garage, coming up from the side, the house that we saw with the fenced-in porch, theirs was to the north, so you drove in off the street and then went back behind the house opposite of this. So I think for them to always be one direction or the other, because that one was sort of backwards. It was on a corner lot. The one with the fenced-in backyard with the roof line that we were worried about?
Oh, so that one does access off the alley, I think. It's an alley there that
It was not an
you go
alley.
down the alley. It is an alley.
There's definitely an alley back there.
It's an improved alley that looks really nice.
It's the nicest alley in Westport.
Okay.
I'm pretty
but
sure.
It is an alley.
Not this alley, right?
No,
Okay.
that's not I lived on this alley. That's not the nicest alley in Westport.
No, it's not at all.
Okay, well, it sounds like you were expecting what staff has put forth.
Yeah.
So I think we probably, in the interest of time, need to just go ahead and move forward with that unless the
Yeah.
commission has some other.
I don't think, Val, unless you have.
I did have
you
one more
questions.
thing that I
Yeah.
wanted really
Yeah.
quick feedback on. So on the front of the house, the client wants to replace the front window. And you can tell just from this photo, that window that's on the porch downstairs, that front room is very dark. So what we're proposing is, instead of completely replacing that and putting in a new unit, what we would like to do is have some side light units that are like narrower, but built custom to match that are wood, so that we can just kind of widen that entire opening and let in more light. Is that something that the commission and staff would find acceptable, or is it like not even worth my time?
I think it's
feel
going
like
to get
that's something
really
you're gonna
tricky.
have to meet with staff, something you need to meet with staff on separately.
Well, I mean, from a guideline perspective, that is a super hard no.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, unless you can show that that window, that whole front elevation is not the historic condition, we'd say no, that is the do not
Okay,
touch
that's
part of
kinda
the
what I
house.
thought.
That's a pretty dangerous precedent to start adding windows on the front of the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Feels like that's clarity right there
Yes,
for
no,
you.
exactly.
right?
Well, that's, I
Okay.
rely on you guys for me to be able to tell my
There's
clients
not a lot
no,
of
so.
things that I can say.
Well, then I will move approval of HPCA-23-0044. I believe it's items 10, 6, and 3, with specific findings as noted in the staff report.
Seconded.
Okay.
okay, could everybody please vote? Okay, that motion has passed.
Okay, and then we need to do a move for continuance. Fallon, what commission meeting would you like to continue to? June or July?
This one, June is fine.
June, okay.
June is
You'll
fine.
have to
I've
have
already
your.
reworked most of this, so.
Oh, okay.
June is fine.
Okay.
I anticipated this.
Okay, so then I move continuance of HPCA-23-00044. Didn't take good notes here, so I think it's going to be item 1, 2, 4, 7, 8, 9 to the June 7th commission hearing.
Second.
Okay, thank you. If everybody would vote in PrimeGov. Okay. Okay. We'll see you in June, unless we'll see you again today. I don't know
You'll
if you
see
have
me
some-
right now.
Okay.
I'm 9 and 11,
Okay.
so
I
I'm
thought-
here.
We're on here again somewhere. Okay, let's go. Does she need to restate her name and address? No, I think we're okay.
For the record, okay.
Number 9, HPCA 23-00045 at 2603 North Dewey, Paseo, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Fallon Brooks Magnus, Creative Home Design, for Nathan Vaughn, HK Homes, for a certificate of appropriateness to 1, split lot. Elective 2, add 2 new 10-foot driveways off of 25th Street. Elective. And 3, construct new duplex with detached garage on proposed first parcel. Elective. So a couple of things on this. The lot split meets all of the code requirements and historic preservation guidelines as far as lot size and lot width. And the Sanborn maps do not show any structures ever having been on this site at all. There is one little concrete staircase going up from the street, suggesting there could have been a house there. It's kind of odd. We'll see when you start digging if you find remnants of houses. But we recommended approval of the lot split because it met all the applicable criteria. Staff did not support adding 2 new driveways at this time, in part because until we have another structure going in on the west end of the property, it would really not be appropriate to have a driveway sitting there all by its lonesome to nothing. So we would rather see that driveway come in as part of an application for a structure and a garage. If and when the duplex is approved, certainly a driveway would be appropriate there. We recommended continuance on the duplex. The staff report goes into quite a bit of detail about concerns regarding the design. I think the overall size and the form are appropriate. Setbacks are met, lot coverage is met, but we had a lot of concerns about the number and the configuration of a wide variety of materials, some of the architectural details, some of the massing of the building, and just kind of, again, the cumulative effect of all of these different kind of characteristics and features together made it seem to not meet those criteria about compatibility with the surrounding district. So.
Okay, that's a lot.
Okay, so yeah, I share staff's concerns over the design. I agree that the proportion is, seems appropriate. We did get a letter in opposition of the driveways.
Yes, I actually spoke with that resident. And so the result of that is talking to the clients, we're going to look at the possibility of eliminating one of the driveways on 25th and maybe moving it around to Dewey. We're not really sure how that's going to pan out, so we can't commit to that.
Okay.
But there are some other options in play for, which addresses some of the concerns as far as the visibility of the parking to 25th Street. If our driveway were to go around on the Dewey side, then we would have a fence there. What we had tried to do with this was, because the base zoning district allows us to have a 10-foot side setback on 25th Street, we actually maintained the 25 feet that exists along 25th so that we weren't just, jutting out 15 feet beyond the house that we're going to put behind it, or, well, to the west of it. So in moving that over, if we were to move it over and put the drive on Dewey to appease some of the parking concerns that exist over there, we would have to move it over to the side. So I would say that with every solution to those problems that were addressed in the letter, there are additional issues. So we're working on it.
I am not personally inclined to support the lot split until we have some finality here with what we're looking at, especially with proposed changes to these driveways and what might be happening. I just would prefer to see it holistically, but.
So the lot split, just given the size of what the base zoning district allows, that's not going to change regardless of how we arrange these. That lot split, the way the lot lines are drawn, that's where they're going to be. We are 45 feet to 50 feet is really our limit, that one line that we're basically adding one property line to split them. And that property line that runs north-south, it's basically got a 5-foot variability. I can go 5 feet one way or I can go 5 feet the other.
Katie,
And
do
so
we know
that's
the kind of standard width of lots in Paseo?
They are 40 to 50 feet.
Okay.
And the minimum, according to the base zoning district, is 40.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you're at 45?
We're 45, yeah.
Yeah, pretty consistently in that 45 to 50 foot range. And HP also says that a new lot should be no less than 90% of the average width on the block, no more than 110%, and they've met that.
So this second lot that will be 95 feet wide is still meeting that criteria?
So I would say it's 95 feet long.
It's, yeah.
Because we're accessing it. I'm sorry, I was looking at this the wrong way.
Because we're oriented towards Dewey on that.
Yeah, I
part of the
gotcha.
split, sorry.
which is not always common to orient toward the side street, but that is the character along that particular block of Dewey, so.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions, comments, thoughts?
Is the concern about the actual, well, item 3, construct new duplex? I don't know who I'm asking. Maybe I'm asking other commissioners this question, or and staff too. Is it the materials? Because it does appear, just looking at the front on, that there's several different materials being used on finishings on this item. Was that one of the concerns?
Definitely the number of materials. I think the shape, the massing of the front elevation and the way the roof interacts with that front facade, the massing of the porches is kind of not typical. It is sitting on grade, whereas when you look down the street, everybody else is 3, 4, or 5 steps up above grade, so that kind of changes that proportion as well.
You're saying, like, if you're looking at it, we've got these other homes that have raised and
Right.
and probably porches and.
In addition to that, it's at grade and it's taller than everything next to it. So you think that everything else is shorter and sitting up higher, so it just changes that whole proportion of the floor heights, the spacing of the windows, the spacing of the porches.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm in support of a duplex. Any increased density is welcome and needed, but, we do have historical precedents for, historic multifamily, and the design just feels a little inappropriate for the context of the historic district to me.
So what I'm hearing is that we are probably in favor of the lot split.
Yep.
And not in favor of the rest right now.
Yeah, I'd say we
That's
approve the
what we
lot split and
expected
continue
today.
the
Okay. Okay.
So can we, well, is there anybody?
Any members of the public who'd wish to speak to this? Oh, we do have some members of the public who would like to speak to this. Come on up. Would you please state your names and addresses for the record?
Hi, my name is Todd Davis. I live at 2611 North Dewey. I was just wondering, is there any consideration being made at this time on how the utilities are going to be pulled to the site for the new structure?
So they will have to work through all of that as part of getting their building permit, and utilities will review that, plan review will review that. The Historic Preservation Commission has no guidelines or criteria or purview over the utilities.
Okay, I understand the property doesn't have any existing sewer or power drop to it, so it's either going to go across our two houses, 2607, 2609 duplex, and 2611. I'm wondering, the consideration would be through the backyards or up the street, trenching up the street. So there would have
is
to be
that something that-
considerations to. About that little panhandle strip.
Yeah, there's an easement in place for utility access that goes onto that property. I don't know that.
Fallon, can you speak into the
Yeah.
microphone? Sorry.
And maybe you can just get with him and show that easement.
It's so comfortable. It's on the site plan. You can see where it's on the west side of that little
It's like
kind
a
of.
20 by 40
Yeah,
little
so not that part, but to the west of that, on the other side of our property line, there is the blue house that you'll see. Well, you can't see it. You can see the porch of it right there. There's a easement that goes into their yard and up to give access to the sewer line, and it's 10 feet wide.
Okay.
So it's plenty large enough for us to get 2 sewer lines in there to access it, so.
So you don't have to come across
tell them to get together.
2611's backyard?
No, and if we
Review.
did, we
We need
would
it.
have to get an easement from you guys.
I do agree with Commissioner Poor. Since we have no purview over this, I would just suggest you all exchanging information, and you can make sure to alleviate any of his concerns and, even walk it off or whatever. Does that sound good? Okay, thank you.
I'm Marcy Matney. I live at 2608 North Dewey, which is right across the street from this proposal, kind of to the north slightly. My biggest concern is I agree with the panel that it's totally I moved into this area 3 years ago because I do love the historical area. I've lived in more than one across the United States, and I saw the proposal for the frontage, the construction. I absolutely disagree with that. But then today I hear that the other driveway may come off on Dewey instead of 25th. Dewey, my living room sits right facing this intersection. It's a very busy intersection. I don't see where you could put a driveway that close to the intersection without it being a hazard. So that'd be my concern.
Katie, is that something staff reviewed?
So we haven't seen a proposal for a driveway to come off Dewey because I think that's something they've just considered changing since talking about the two
Yes.
driveways off of 25th.
Yes,
So
she just brought
we
it
will
up
We will
today.
have to work with the applicant on that as they,
Yeah, it's a valid
develop those
consideration,
plans.
for sure.
Okay.
So on this CA, we've got the lot split, which is one that we've already kind of talked to, agree to. And then 2 and 3, we're going to continue on till next month, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That's what I'm hearing.
So I'll make a motion on HPCA 23-00045 on item 1 for approval.
I'll second.
Okay, if everybody would please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, that has passed.
And then I make a motion for number 2 and 3 for a continuance until June.
And I'll second.
Okay, that has also passed, so we will see you in a few weeks. Okay, moving on to case number 10.
This is HPCA 23-46 at 701 Northwest 15th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Brent Wall, Laud Studio, for Crystal Johnson for a certificate of appropriateness to 1, install fence elective. And staff recommended approval of this with the condition that the south and east fence be set back 40% of the length of the side yard to meet the guidelines.
Okay, sir, would you state your name and address for the record?
Brent Wall, 220 Northwest 13th Street, Suite 1.
Okay.
Oklahoma City.
Great. In the interest of time, since it seems like staff is recommending an approval on the main fence, let's walk through this potentially agreed upon condition first and see if anybody has concerns about the remainder of the project.
Sure. I want to add just a little bit of context. Again, sort of go through this thought process of how we wound up with this kind of final design. This is the perfect view. So just north of the house and east of that driveway, that area in there has a really large active water cistern, and there's gas lines, electric, phone, all of that is right in that area. So that whole area is kind of a no development portion for us, okay? To the northeast, there's lots and lots of mature trees. So we have our client here today, Jeremy Johnson. He and his wife have young kids. They would really like to have some active play area. They'd like to be able to kind of develop the yard for their family. This is kind of their forever home, and so they really want to try to make this as sort of comfortable and have all the things they would like. So this house it's one of the jewels of Heritage Hills. Anybody who's lived in the neighborhood for a long time has seen this house kind of go from sitting vacant for many years to finally being occupied, and now kind of coming into its own and sort of continuing to be improved upon. It's actually really incredible that it's never had a fence, which kind of leaves us in sort of an odd situation where we're trying to, that's what it looked like a long time ago. We don't take these kinds of things and we don't bring things to you lightly. And so working with the client and multiple iterations around the office, we felt like bringing a really high quality masonry fence with wood elements that are identical to the existing railing on that column right there, you can see in between the two trees, bringing the fence to that location gave us enough room to actually do some things within the yard, potentially a pool in the future or cabana or whatever we can do within our impermeable surface limits. Also, you'll notice, would you go back right here, yeah. You'll notice that there is a basement window right there at the bottom. And since this image was taken, there's actually an air conditioner unit right there as well. So looking at this, we have going into the column, which is kind of behind that bush. And that is pretty much proud of that 40% mark. As we move back, it starts to really, we're just trying to find a good place for that fence to sort of enter into the house. And as you go back, it just starts to limit the amount of yard space that you have in this sort of side yard area. So that was really how we approached it. We were also watching very closely the case that was on 14th and Hudson, because it's kind of a very similar situation, and there was a few versions that came before the board. And in that case, they basically came into the column on the side. It does introduce a situation where you then have a gateway up on the porch and steps down into the yard, but again, just looking at the total lot, trying to figure out the best place to do it, we felt like that was the best place to tag into the house and kind of make that happen. Now, our clients are very committed to replicating the look of the house as faithfully as possible. And so, and on our side, that means our brick distributors brought us 10 different samples. It's all Arkansas brick. And so we're trying to do everything we can to make this feel like it was sort of part of the home whenever it was originally designed. So that's really our philosophy here, is we're trying to do everything right by this house, because we know that it's an amazing house. And so that's our case to push that fence forward a little bit.
The only question I really have is, I heard you mention, a gate across that porch, but that's not part of this proposal, correct? We're not looking at that?
It's not.
Okay.
It may have been omitted, and we're happy to bring that back to you if it's something that you all need to see. It would be tucked back on the porch and hopefully not very visible, and not really meant to be an architectural feature. It's one of those oddities. It's just kind of a unusual place for that to open up and go out into the yard. So, and we have to do it for security if in the future. That's why we didn't propose it, because we don't know if a pool would happen here or not, but in the future, to secure it, there would be an additional little gateway right there.
And this porch floor is just concrete, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
For me, because of the size of the lot and kind of the huge expanse of this roof line over that front porch, I don't have the same issue with where that fence is, the setback of that fence as it relates to the house as I might on some other properties. When you're looking at this house from the street, it very much feels like the roof line of that porch is the mass of the house. So it, inherently already feels set back from the mass. That is a little in conflict with the guidelines, but I do think it's a unique circumstance, because that is a really substantial overhang on that porch.
And I will just note that all of our guidelines on fence placement are under administrative approval, so that's what they have to do for staff to approve. The commission has the discretion to recognize a fence location that doesn't meet that guideline, but that is otherwise appropriate.
So Katie, when you say that the 40%, that's 40% of the whole width of the lot, right?
It's 40% of the length of the side yard, so the length of from the front of the house to the back of the house. And I think they're off by like 3 feet. Is that? Yes. So 3 feet on a house of this size and this scale.
On a true double lot.
Yeah.
Is probably fairly negligible.
It's a huge lot.
I would be in favor of moving this one along. Can we discuss these agreed upon conditions? Katie?
I think the only condition is for it to hit that 40% mark.
And does the commission feel that it needs to be moved back those 3 feet? No, and it can't realistically because of that HVAC, or did I misunderstand the placement of that?
No, it's just trying to find the sort of
Like the most organic
appropriate
line of
place where,
sight.
yeah,
Right. Okay.
where it feels like where the original architect of this house would have put some sort of side fence. That's what we're looking for.
Did we have comments?
We did from the neighborhood, and it just agree with the staff report. And I mean, I almost feel like this could just be moved for approval.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to
And we're
move it
going to
30 feet.
strike the conditions and just note the unique circumstances. And I think we are understanding what the applicant is trying to say, that you're just trying to
I
get
don't
it
even
where.
think
You just did, just put the number.
do we even need unique circumstances since you said that the commission can determine fence placement?
I mean, we wrote it, we worked really hard on that. No, I think you can take it or leave it.
Okay.
Anybody here from the public?
Anybody want to speak to this? Nope.
Then I would move approval. I don't know what item we're on. HPCA-23-0046.
I'll second
Correct.
that.
Thanks.
Okay, everybody please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, congratulations, you have been approved.
Thank you all, we appreciate it.
Okay, moving on to case number 11.
HPCA 23-47 at 800 Northwest 16th Street, Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Fallon Magnus, Jolly Bird Home Design, for Susan Key for a certificate of appropriateness to 1, convert garage to guest house elective, 2, construct garage elective, 3, install door and window elective, and 4, replace window at northwest corner to match new window elective. So this is essentially an application to convert the existing garage to a guest room, a guest suite, and then build a new garage to replace the old garage, adding on to the existing structure. Staff had concerns about, number 1, about the modifications to the existing garage, and number 2, about the addition of an entire new structure, essentially in front of the historic garage. So we did recommend continuance on this item. And again, just to note that the zoning does not allow a second dwelling. You can certainly convert a garage to all sorts of other functions on the interior, but it can't be a self-sustaining, true second dwelling.
And does I'm sorry, go ahead and introduce yourself again.
Fallon Magnus, 733 Northwest 22nd.
Okay, so does a dwelling unit without a kitchen, does it pertain to what you just stated about you cannot construct a
Right,
whole
so
new
the
dwelling?
kitchen is kind of the deal breaker. If you've got a full kitchen plus sleeping quarters, bathing, then it's a dwelling. You can have a pool house with a little kitchenette and a bathroom
In
and
my
a shower in
experience,
it.
it's the stove
Yes,
particularly.
yes.
They
Oh.
don't want, and that's fine. This is for hosting in-laws and, friends and family and things like that, so.
Okay, good to know. Okay.
Not a rental.
So because that's actually, my takeaway is that's not allowable in HP, period. Am I hearing that correctly, to create a whole second structure?
No, I think what they're proposing is allowed.
Okay.
If they're not going to
Yeah.
have a stove, a full kitchen, then it would be allowed.
Yeah, we've done it before.
Am I missing a site plan on this or an elevation? Oh, wait, I found the site plan, but am I missing? It might just be on one of these that wasn't loading.
I didn't see anything that was like showing a photo of the current existing garage other than like that view.
So this shows I think if we scroll through our PowerPoint, you can see the garage, the existing garage.
And so where's this second structure proposed to be going?
It's going on the drive, where the driveway is I'm saying in front of, I'm not
the east.
oriented to what direction, east of the existing
Oh,
garage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Literally the only place we can fit another structure.
Got it.
Because of the setback and everything. The other option would have been to go up, but the guidelines state that vertical additions are not allowed in the Mesta Park. Even though there is a 2-story garage abutting. So,
So even just the size situation, I mean, basically you're doubling the size of more or less a garage.
Yeah.
And I don't know what, I mean, that doesn't seem compatible with the guidelines. Like if they were to tear this garage down and rebuild it, what would be the max allowable that they could increase that size to?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be that standard 450 or 5% of the lot.
But do we know what 5% of the lot would be here?
Yes, hang on just a second and I'll tell you. It'd be about 600 square feet.
And you are currently at, you don't want to answer, do you?
No.
What are you currently at?
9 something.
Okay.
So let me ask the commission this, because I think this is the direction that we would like to head. Would the commission be amenable to an open, covered structure? We're not going to call it a carport. We're going to say it's a gathering or something. Gathering, what do you want to call it? So we need covered parking off of the front of that in order to make this work as another.
I don't know if on a corner lot we could get there on a carport. I don't know.
It's not a carport.
There's one.
It's a carport.
There's one next door, 2 doors down.
There's what?
Isn't there one like next door or 2 doors down?
I don't
An
know about
open-
next door. So next door is really the only thing I looked at. It's a 2-story.
I thought right around there there's a
Couple of them.
Well, there's obviously several single car, porticos, but I'm not recalling anything. There probably are some carports or whatever you'd like to call them on interior lots. I'm not really immediately recalling anything that's this visible that would be considered covered parking non-garage.
Yeah, I agree. I can't think of anything. There are some, so throughout the neighborhood, we have some very old carports that have garage doors on the front, so they look like a garage.
Yeah.
And then when you look in the backyard, it's actually a carport, but those would not have been something that went through HP Commission, and I can't think of one that we've approved like that. That's not to say you don't give it a shot, but I can't think of one recently that we've approved that was on a corner like this where it was in full view.
So even though the guidelines state specifically that vertical addition is not allowed, is it, since they're just guidelines, is that an option? We do abut a 2-story garage?
Yeah, that was my
We're
question.
trying to
If that
find
feels in
space here
conflict.
somewhere.
If it does abut, but it is on the corner, what's the rule there?
Well,
And is it an addition if it's not on the main house?
Staff might have to do some research on that. The addition language is definitely, so one of the things we've talked about with doing some revisions to the guidelines is that we don't have adequate guidance for adding on to a garage. A lot of the language we have about adding on to a house just isn't applicable to a garage structure. I think for the purposes of what we have now to work with, we would have to consider that rule about vertical additions and messed apart to apply to any structure. Again, it's a guideline. The commission could find that to be a unique circumstance, but I think that's I would say that is just as dramatic a change to the historic garage as adding on another structure in front of it. So I don't know that that's getting you to anything.
But it would still be up to the commission.
I do think it is a dramatic change, and that is certainly not a given that it would get passed anywhere, but I find it personally less dramatic than a 900-foot structure or a carport. So not to say we would approve it, but I would be more open to thinking about it than I am a carport, or a carport feels like taking a few steps backwards.
I actually think we did one, kind of like you were describing, covered patio area maybe in Shepherd several years ago. I think there might have been a fence and a gate, so it was at least partially screened. I don't know if that's something that's been contemplated here, to have a solid gate at the driveway, but.
There is a solid gate, isn't there?
It's not solid, but
Okay.
there's a gate.
But it would be for parking though, not for gathering.
I mean, it kind of would be both, like adaptable, so.
I struggle with that one, but
So it sounds like it probably need to go back to the drawing board and
Well, and that's, I mean, this is one of those things where our strategy was to get feedback from commission, really. Because it's not specifically in the guidelines.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. This is my client, Sammy Duncan.
Yes, Sammy Duncan, 800 Northwest 16th. So essentially, the issue is my husband and I both work full-time. We have a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and then a new baby any moment now. And so there's just a lot of times that we're working that we can't go pick up the kids when we get that like RSV hand, foot, mouth phone call at daycare. And so it's really tough. And we need a place for my mom just to sleep. And so I'm hoping to convert the garage into like a little guest room sort of for her. But then there's a few things that I just don't want to have to put in my house, like a lawnmower and like double, triple strollers and like just these things that don't fit in your home. So would it be more likely to do 2 stories on this corner lot, or should we extend like the roof and have like a little covered patio area that's maybe even like dual purpose screened in with a picnic table or something? Because I just need somewhere to put, you know, like this stuff you don't want in your house that's in your garage. Like, where do we put that crap? But then also,
But this would still have to, per HP, it would have to function in some capacity always as a garage, correct?
What, another structure?
Like if this
Okay.
existing garage, if she's talking about adding, I'm assuming if you're talking about adding a little screened porch, you're talking about using the existing interior space of your garage as kind of like the little apartment?
yes, I think the 2 options here are the existing garage being a little guest room and then extending out 1 story per the guidelines, because it's a corner lot, so you're not really supposed to go up. So extending out, or would it be better for y'all if we came back and it went up?
I think that that's probably a conversation for staff, because there are a lot of options there, and I don't think we really should be giving guidance on, you know, on your design philosophy. So I do think that that's a great conversation.
I think it would be helpful for us to meet and,
Yeah.
and we can try and pull some previous projects that have gotten approved and come up with some different options.
Okay. Okay, any members of the public wish to follow this up with anything?
So then
when do you
can
want
I
to
make a-
continue?
Yeah, thank you. June or July?
June's definitely, or July.
July? Yeah. Okay, because you'll,
We would have to redesign and resubmit by
You have to meet with staff, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
so it's probably July.
Okay.
okay, I'm going to move continuance of item HPCA-23-0047, items 1, 3, 2, and 4,
To the July.
to the July, I'm sorry, I looked at it and thought, am I even on the right item? I am on the right item. To the July 5th meeting.
Okay, do we have a second? Good deal. If you would all please vote. Cassie Poor. Okay, that has passed, so we will see you in July. Moving on to case number 12.
This is HPCA 23-00048 at 2316 Northwest 28th Street, Shepherd Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Holly Hunt, Sam Gresham Architect, for Sarah Ashmore for certificate of appropriateness to 1, restore, expand front porch elective, 2, construct addition at house elective, and 3, construct back porch elective. So this is the first time this has been before the commission. The staff has recommended continuance on all 3 items. With the porch, the main concern is that we don't have, the floor plans and site plans don't show anything regarding the proposed expansion to the front porch. We don't have drawings, measurements for the existing or proposed front porch. We generally don't support changing the layout, the size, configuration of a front porch, but just, I don't think we had what we needed to go on to fully evaluate that. And then on the addition of that porch, we just had concerns about kind of the massing of it. It creates a really long structure that extends deep into the yard all along one side. There were no windows added. It is mid-block. That would be fairly minimally visible, but that is always a concern of staffs, that we have window-to-wall ratios that are typical of the historic structure. I think those were largely the issues that we had with the proposed addition.
Okay, so it appears the applicant is present. If you would state your name and address for the record.
Hello, everyone. Holly Hunt, Sam Gresham Architects at 400 Northwest 23rd Street. Since we are pressed for time, I'm going to jump right in. We'll save the front porch till the end. We really brought that in front of you with a couple of options in order to get some feedback from the commission. So clearly, let's table that. The addition is of most importance to get approved today, and I think this is a very approvable addition. It's a 297 square foot addition, so well below the 750 maximum addition. We're also, in the 30 percentile of the lot. So this is a modest addition. Also, one thing that I think is lost in translation on the staff report, it's very clear in the Sanborn maps that this one-story projection was always a part of the original home. So the original full depth of the home is 32 foot 10 and a half inches, which clearly shows on A2.2 on our floor plan. You can see that existing dimension, which would include, you can see it on the existing plan too, but that full 32 dimension. Our addition is 23 foot 4, so we're almost 10 foot less than the total depth of the existing historic structure. So I'm really not sure why that's been brought up. We are less than the depth of the total existing historic home. A lot of the reason why we extended into the backyard has to do with that existing condensing unit, which you'll see on your site plan. It's relatively large, but it is a relatively newer addition to the home. It works in great functionality. There's no reason for us to relocate it or demolish it. So in order to be able to mow around it and things like that, we have stretched that addition out just enough to allow for that condensing unit to remain and to be able to mow around it. But again, less than 300 square foot addition. It's a very common condition in this, not only on this street, but in Shepherd as a whole, to have this two-story addition at the front. It gives you this very tall street facade, and then a one-story projection off the back. Many of the neighbors of Ms. Sashmore have one-story, very long additions. Ours are not even as long as many of her neighbors. So again, we feel like this is a modest addition, well within the guidelines. You guys know me. I don't bring you guys stuff that you can't approve. We're here every month. So again, less than 300 square foot, one-story addition, not visible from the street. The last thing I'll address that's in the specific findings, and this is just, I don't know, I blanked. I would be happy as a condition of the approval to provide a clear and discernible break showing where the addition occurs. We can do that with a brick detail. We often do a vertical roll lock, which would just delineate what's old and new. I know staff can work with us to make sure that happens. I really hope we can get this, relatively modest addition approved today.
Okay, well, right off the bat, one thing that I feel confused about is it seems very clear that the depth of the addition is deeper than the deepest existing. No, am I reading this incorrectly?
No, the existing home. Even in the, well, I would suggest looking at the proposed site plan, because you can see where the new is versus the old. And again, we had to make some modifications due to that condensing unit. So I think that the dimensions aren't exactly right on there, but they are on the floor plan. Here we go. You can see right here. So there's the existing house. this dimension is 32 foot 10. That's the existing house. And we're adding on 23 foot 4.
Okay.
So
I
it's
see.
less, it's almost, it's 9 foot 6.5 inches less than the existing depth of the home.
Okay.
Don't track that.
Yeah, there's the existing home as it sits on the footprint of the site, you know. And that's shows on the historic Sanborn map. So that's been, from the original construction, it's always had this one-story projection off
So
the back.
the original
for
depth
the
is
kitchen.
34, roughly
It's-
34 feet, and the existing, or the proposed addition is 21 feet?
Yeah, sorry, and I know, we had to shift it back 2 feet, so it's 32, 10 and a half, that's brick to brick. Oftentimes I dimension to the frame because that's just how we do it architecturally. When you build, you go to the stud, but you can see on a 2.1 or 2.2 and on the site plan. So the existing brick to brick is 32, 10 and a half. That's the existing dimension. And where we begin the addition, it's 23, 4. And that includes the brick. So that's a full footprint, including the brick.
Okay, but that's still deeper than, you had referenced the like Sanborn map and the existing, I mean, it's
3210 is greater than 23.4.
Okay, that.
Right?
Yes, but the
Okay.
logic, I guess I was understanding and the way you were explaining it is that you were not adding any additional length, and you are.
Oh, certainly we are.
okay.
We're just not, we're not adding more than the depth of the existing house. As in,
Okay.
the guidelines state that we can't do an addition that's deeper than the existing house.
Okay, got it.
Obviously, any addition would be deeper, would it increase the depth of the overall house.
It feels like there's a lot of stuff that needs to get worked out with staff. I know you said you would table the
I know.
front porch for now. We have basically nothing on the front porch, so we would certainly need to.
We spent so much time talking about other ones, please don't let that
It's not
be
that,
a
it's
reason
just
why
I
we
think
can't
that,
discuss this. This is not an unapprovable item for the addition. This is a very small addition, and it doesn't break any guidelines. The only things that we really need to talk about, I think, are the discernment, the delineation of old to new, and maybe adding some windows. And I'm be willing to talk about that, but as far as approving this addition, it's very approvable.
I don't know, though, that we can we, and correct me if I'm wrong, can we approve, I guess we might could because they're new windows. Could we, do agreed upon conditions when it involves windows?
Yeah, we've done conditions to submit additional, well, yes, we've done that on additions. If we're able to pin down where one or more windows is going, we did that just recently on the house that's in Heritage Hills East that had a lot of work done, but,
Yeah, I thought that was because those were covered, but
So can you do the placement of the windows and the type of windows? Can you do that working with Holly?
So if you all approve it with a condition that they add windows, and if you can
On the
kind of
west
give
side.
some direction on
Yeah,
number
so-
of windows, location of window, that's
Yeah,
something that can be.
I would make a
estimated to
suggestion,
staff.
if you guys would really like to see some additional windows, we could add 2 windows in the kitchen, as you can see by my red lines, that match the existing window in the butler's pantry. We could add those on either side of the range, and even if we felt like 3 windows were really necessary, we could add 1 more in the laundry room, a kind of a tall and skinny window above the laundry machines. I would recommend that at like 2 by 4. But that's certainly something that we could do. Me and the homeowner spoke about it. She felt like it would be more important for her to get more storage. Also, the existing 1-story projection didn't have any windows on that west side, so, for us it was, but this is something I first saw being brought up, and we are happy and amenable to adding some windows on that west side. It's perfectly fine. I just hope that that's something we can work out with staff because it is a relatively minor detail. But we could, just like you see, on either side of the range, we could add a couple windows and then maybe 1 in the laundry. So
I don't
2
see
to 3
I don't
windows.
see a need for the 3rd window, especially if
Great.
it's up high and it's skinny. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Fantastic.
But the other 2,
2 windows in the kitchen, I think we can certainly add that.
And Katie, creating in the specific findings, number 4, that there appears to be no clear differentiation between historic and new fabric. is that, I mean, is that something staff is comfortable approving administratively?
So I think we would want some direction from the commission on what you want to look, what you want that to look like. We've, as Holly mentioned, sometimes people propose just a simple change in material. Sometimes we see more of an actual inset where, you know, the wall shifts over and there's a break. Sometimes we see a break in the roof form.
Would it be easier to have a differential material that's like a vertical instead of a horizontal?
Yes, that is exactly what I would suggest, and I was talking so fast to try to save time. But I would suggest doing what we call vertical roll log, similar to what you see below a window on a sill. It's when the bricks are turned on their edge, on the short end, and we could run that vertically and also recess it. So that, you know, the normal brick line, you've got about a 1-inch recess, and then you see brick turned on its edge and on the short end running vertically. It really just does that, exactly what the guidelines say, a clear and discernible line.
Yeah,
and
I'm
it
fine.
says that it can be meager,
Yeah, I am too.
and that is exactly what we would do.
I'm fine with that.
I think that, you know, because that'll keep that clean line, but if you can just create something in there and you're agreeable to add a couple windows on the west elevation, I think.
And work
I
with
think-
staff on that, yeah.
Yes,
I think
and
that's
work with staff
fantastic.
on that.
We're great with that, guys. Thank you.
And then we're talking about continuing the front porch
Continuing the
to
front porch.
June.
I need to work with staff more on that. Guys, here's what it is. So the existing proposal, that bid you saw, is just to literally repair ordinary maintenance, and it talks about that in the staff report, ordinary maintenance. But the homeowners would really like to increase the width of that porch, which again, didn't make it on my site plan. This is kind of a secondary item, but I wanted to talk to you guys about that. Clearly, we've run out of time to talk about that. So we can table that to the next meeting.
Is there, I forget
So
where
I'm
we
fine with
are.
the continuance
Is there
on the
anybody
front
here?
porch.
I guess we need to ask if anybody else would like to speak
Any
on this
members of
item.
the public wish to speak to this? Okay, do we have a motion?
If not, I'll
Or two?
move approval of HPCA-23-0048, items 2 and 3 with the,
No,
With the
yeah,
condition.
right? Because that's the addition.
You're correct.
Items
2
2
and
and 3.
With the agreed upon conditions.
Yeah, with the agreed upon conditions, and that you will work with staff on placement of windows and some differentiation on the west elevation of the addition.
Okay, do we have a second?
second.
Okay, everybody please vote in PrimeGov.
Okay, and then we need to have a continuance. Holly, where would you like to continue to?
June will be fine.
The June
well,
7th?
As long as, yes, I can get drawings to them.
Okay.
Yes,
So
we'll
June.
be able to work together before.
I thought you were about to say you already started on them. Like everybody else, like,
Oh,
we've
no.
already started.
Oh, no, I always take the
Will-
quickest turnaround possible. I like a challenge.
I'd like to move continuance of HPCA-23-0048, item 1 to the June 7th HP Commission hearing.
Second.
Okay, everybody please vote.
Thank you, guys. I look forward to being, higher up on the agenda next month so we can discuss this at more time. Thank you.
Okay, item 13.
HPCA 23-00052 at 824 Northwest 38th Street, Crown Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Miles Mixon, Revive Design Build for Certificate of Appropriateness. I'm not going to read off all the items, but they are renovating the house and replacing the garage and altering the front entry feature. This is the first time the commission has seen this application. Staff has recommended approval of the demolition of the garage. I believe we have recommended a continuance on all other items. Concerns include just a lack of documentation on a lot of architectural details and materials for the addition, the covered patio, and the new garage. Some lack of documentation and clarity on repair and replacement of existing windows, although we have had some communication from the applicant on that today that we can talk about. And then staff's concern with the front entry feature is that we don't believe that to be historic, but we don't have any reason to believe that coating it with a mortar slurry wash is any more appropriate than what is there now. We don't really have any context to support that change, that alteration to the front entry feature. So without something to say this is a more appropriate appearance than what's existing currently, we didn't feel that we could support that change.
Okay. Could you state your name and address for the record?
Miles Mixon, 515 Northwest 42nd.
Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to try to be concise with a couple of questions. I think that the conversation about item 6, the mortar slurry wash to the existing stone veneer, could be a can of worms, so to speak, if we're talking about trying to find a different material. Is that something you're willing to continue if we run out of time?
Yes, I'm willing to just, on that, would look to you guys for some advice on that. It's right now Calumet stone. It looks like it's been painted. It looks like someone stripped it. It looks like someone brushed it with like a wire wheel, so there's like oxidized iron stains all over it. We've considered maybe taking the stone down, then reversing it to a side that maybe hasn't been exposed to elements, paint, steel, iron, and maybe that could potentially work. That stone is known to be very brittle and porous, so kind of taking that down, which it will have to be taken down, would maybe, open that can of worms to where, the lime wash is, that mortar wash is something that we originally looked at. I'm completely okay just going with a, historic light kind stone that's, has continuity with the rest of the houses in the area and doing that, like, no problem. I mean, I'm not gonna, that's not something I'm willing to, I'm not concerned about that, really. I mean, just whatever we could find that we could all agree on is what I'd be willing to do there.
So I think we could continue that item if ultimately you land on replacing that stone in kind. That is something that I think we could administratively approve.
Yeah, I would replace it in kind.
Okay, so let's table that one for now and try to plow through a little bit of this other stuff before we go. Katie, could you offer clarity on, you said something about some of the conversation surrounding the windows had been clarified?
So we have attachments in your packet that talk about replacing.
There's a minor error in there.
Yeah, various windows. The applicant has indicated that they actually do not intend to replace any of the historic windows. They simply intend to repair them. We don't really have a lot of information about what repair entails. We typically like to get at least some idea of what's involved in that. But we would want better window by window clarification of what windows are not historic and are being replaced and with what, and what windows are historic and are being repaired.
If it was a replacement in kind with wood windows, I think this came up in March, as to whether, the conversation was about whether that was something staff should be allowed to work on with the applicant and us approve with agreed upon conditions, because it's such a common reoccurrence. If it is coming back with wood, is that something that can be done, or does it need to come back to the commission?
We can't approve it administratively. You all have the ability to approve it with the condition that they submit appropriate replacement window documentation to staff.
Is that something you would feel comfortable with?
We had not recommended that simply because we have so many missing parts on this application. And when it's one thing that's going to come back to staff, we're pretty comfortable with that. When it's a lot of different elements, we tend to prefer that it come back to commission. But on non-historic windows being replaced with windows that meet the guidelines, I'd be comfortable with that being a staff item.
In the long and the short of kind of what I'm after here, I've already replaced all the missing glass already. I've already glazed in those pieces. We kind of had, like I said, a brief error, a little error on the window, what we were doing there. My plan on it originally has always been to restore all the wooden windows that are there, which would entail sanding, priming, painting, glazing points, cleaning those all up to where they're functional. But basically the only original windows on the house are the ones on the front elevation. There's a couple on the west elevation. Everything else, it looks like it's 1970s, like horizontal bar aluminum windows, and then there's a lot of like vinyl, not really an SDL, like divided light type window, but just like a vinyl, mutton inside the glass that, I'm just, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like I'm just trying to get this thing moving and getting like windows ordered, because it is going to be probably at least 20 weeks before, once I have approval, to get this thing moving. So I mean, I want to work with you all, and I think I have a pretty strong reputation that I've always kind of worked within the guidelines and then have, like, in my opinion, great historic work in a lot of these different areas, and it's not going to be any different on this one.
So is it on like this is a question for staff, the item 1, construct second story addition. I'm sorry, let me read the items 1 and 2. It's the documentation that I feel like that's what I'm reading.
Yes,
Just
we weren't really concerned about it meets guidelines for size, for location, for height, et cetera. We just are lacking a lot of the detail on materials and architectural features and that sort of thing.
How, and because I know we've done some like this, but how is staff most comfortable? I mean, if we're looking at and we don't have any concerns with the design, is that a condition we would build in that we've got to tighten up the documentation that comes to you for final approval? I can't remember.
We have done that as a condition before, when someone was missing an element of the documentation. This is kind of a lot of documentation that's missing, so we were reluctant to make that recommendation. I'm sympathetic to the applicant wanting to move forward with the project. We just would really, really prefer not to have an approved but not complete application sitting on our desks for the next, 6 months without all the pieces and parts there.
Could we create some type of contingency to where this would basically be contingent upon approval? Obviously, if I provide, additional documentation.
Well, it could be an approved with the condition that you submit everything to staff.
Yeah.
So because this is materials, I actually feel the complete opposite. I don't love doing agreed upon conditions when it's design based, like that last one made me really antsy. But when it's materials, they're so clearly laid out in the guidelines, I actually feel quite a bit more comfortable with it being a conversation with staff as to what to get approved. I do understand there are a lot of missing pieces, and if it's too much, it's too much. But for me, it's the design stuff when we do agreed upon conditions on the actual.
And a significant
design.
amount of my materials that I use, like when I get to siding, for instance, I don't like using the cement board. When it paints, it orange peels really bad. It doesn't look right. So I can't really list that as something that a specification from a manufacturer. What I typically do is go to Forest or one of the local companies, buy redwood or cedar, and then I have it milled at custom cutting to the exact profile of the clapboard that's on the existing part of the house. So I could put that in, but I think when I put like kind, that's kind of what I intended to be, that it'd be like a duplicate of what is there.
Yeah, and when we see in kind, we just need to know what in kind is.
Okay.
If you tell me I'm going to match existing, then you have to document the existing.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. If you're replacing wood with wood and you're going to match the wood, that's great. But we need to see the profile, we need to see the dimension so that we know what we're matching. But I think we know what we're missing. We can work with you on that. We just.
Okay.
And then
all
as
pieces
far
and
as,
parts.
I'm sorry.
That's good.
Continue. Item 3, repair, replace existing windows. That, what you're needing there is almost window by window what's going on.
Yeah, I think we need more thorough, clarified documentation of every window so that we can either tell it's historic, this one's being repaired, this is what I'm doing to it, or it's not historic, here's how you can tell it's vinyl, it's metal, whatever, and here's what I'm replacing it with.
Okay.
And I think I try to do that, but I'm basically saying we coded the windows to where, like, E1 was referenced with this. There's several windows of the same size, so basically a lot of this is I didn't want to go take, if I had a 3050 window that was aluminum from the 70s, I wasn't going to take 5 photographs showing that. I just basically showed that that's this window, there's this many of them, and this is the replacement of what the window. But I'm more than happy to go back and document these the aluminum and the vinyl windows.
And then the item on the garage is that, what I'm reading, it exceeds the allowable size for replacement.
Yes.
Building material in the garage.
That, my lot size is 8410. If I added all my permeable paving right now, non-permeable, including the footprint of the house, all the paved surfaces, including sidewalk and driveway, with the, garage I'm working to get approved, would be about 45% of the lot would now be non-permeable surfaces.
What percentage of the lot would the garage be?
I think
Since it exceeds
I think
450.
even on almost any of these lots, we're going to be anything 5% is always going to be over like the standard 450. But on this one particular one, my neighbor directly I looked at just all the abutting properties on this one. My neighbor to the east is 600 square feet. My neighbor to the west is 720 square feet. The two abutting to my back are 725 and 551.
And what is yours currently?
630. Yeah, there's, we're talking about the inches. I'm willing to go to we could do 600 or whatnot, but I think right now, everything within, it'd be about 7% lot coverage.
Well, there's no reason to go smaller than you currently
Yeah,
have.
the
correct?
existing is 400 square feet, right? The existing garage is 20 by 20. Is that what you were asking?
Yes,
What,
and I'm basically just flanked by larger garages on all sides right now. And that's what I was just using that, the abutting property, I feel like we've used that in the past to kind of identify sizes and that we're going to allow based on, I know in the past that's what we've kind of looked at. The last one time I think I was in here was because we had several garages that were all, larger, and then we were going for a larger one.
so we do typically take that into consideration. We would want to see documentation of that so that you all could look at it ahead of the meeting, staff could verify ahead of the meeting those surrounding garage sizes. So I think that might be an item that I don't see a way that we could approve that item without having
Okay.
more information.
So am I right in saying that there's a way possible that, I got to talk through this, items 1, 2, and 3 could be approved, but each of those has the condition that they've got to have the documentation submitted to you?
I feel
And staff.
comfortable with that because I feel like the design is so inherently appropriate. I feel, and it's not visible from the front, other than the windows, of course, but I feel comfortable with that, but I know it's a lot on staff. The garage, I think, has to be revisited, as does item 6.
And I would just say on page 2, even though I know that we don't have dimensions of these garages, you can see that they're, definitely larger than what I am, but I'd also say, I think it's very important to take into account that I have letters of support from all the abutting neighbors on this project right now that see no problem with this moving forward.
So Cassie is literally packing up, so I think if there are things we are agreeing upon, we should vote on them right now.
Yep. And we have 2 home share applicants waiting very patiently in the back that
Okay.
we need to get to before we lose quorum. So it sounds like we could make a motion to approve items 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, I'll move approval HPCA-23-0052, items 1, 2, and 3, with specific findings in the staff report, and then the conditions, and I cannot stress enough that the details needed by staff for materials are turned in to staff as quickly as possible.
Second.
Okay, everybody please vote in PrimeGov.
And then I'm assuming what commission would like to do is see, you know what, I'm sorry, item 4 was actually approved, wasn't it? Demolition of existing garage.
It's a separate motion, though, for demolition usually, so that's okay.
right.
Okay.
That's right. I'm going to move approval, HPCA-23-0052, item 4, demolition of existing garage.
Okay, second?
Second.
Anybody? Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, that has passed.
And then I
Last one.
believe what we're looking at is continue items 5 and 6. Just determines on, Miles, when you'd like to have those come back, June or July. When?
June or
Ones are we continuing?
June 7th or July
And I
5th.
mean, which items are being
Oh,
continued?
the garage and the stone at the front of the house. The demo has been approved. Want more documentation on the percentage proposed garage or what the max allowable would be under that 5%.
I don't really have an option here. I'm just trying to think about, I'm trying to get this project going. I'm trying to think of like, that was
You
the
have a
thing I
lot
was
to get
trying to
going on.
Trying to
Everything-
get going so I could
You
use
can't
that as
get
a-
this thing demoed by the June 6th meeting.
I'll have it demoed tomorrow. No, I'm kidding.
All right, June 6th or July 5th.
You're about to lose quorum on it, so pick a date. Come
Yeah,
on.
yeah, let's, June 6th.
Okay,
Okay, I'll move continuance, HBCA-23-0052, items 5 and 6 to the June 7th commission hearing.
second.
okay, everybody please vote in PrimeGov. Okay. We will see you on June 7th.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Let's see, Board
We
of
have
Adjustment.
2 items under other business. First is BOA 15311 at 720 Northwest 28th Street. This is a home share in a district that is zoned HL, and we have recommended a recommendation of approval to Board of Adjustment.
Okay,
And these are just recommendations from us to the Board of Adjustment?
Yep.
Okay.
okay.
Is anybody here to speak? Any from the public?
Anybody here to speak on behalf of this?
So is this one,
So
always
this is
forget
one
about
that
these.
is,
We're-
so this
we're-
is one that is in an HL overlay, so they just need a recommendation because it's not the owner's primary residence. But they are not required to be on site at the time of rental. It is not required that it be there.
okay.
But they will be the ones approving it, not us.
Board of Adjustment
Correct.
is the
We're
one that
just-
will
Then I
grant.
make a motion that we forward that to
Board of
the
Adjustment?
Board of Adjustments for BOA 15311.
Second.
Okay, everybody please vote in PrimeGov. Okay, motion carries. Good to go.
And BOA 15365 at 418 Northwest 24th Street, Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Same situation. This is an application for a home share in an HL overlay district.
Okay.
Yep,
Is
same
there
thing.
anyone here speaking on behalf of that? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve BOA 15365 for
Second.
recommendation to the Board of Adjustment.
Second.
Okay, everybody vote in PrimeGov. Motion has passed.
Is there any other action needed real quick?
There is no
action
other
items.
action needed. Nothing else to report. Municipal Counselor?
Nothing.
Nothing.
That's the same.
Okay.
We lost our quorum, so the meeting's over. Good. She didn't get up, so.
Okay, well, any items from commissioners? Citizens to be heard?
No.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Yes.
That was good.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you,
Pass.